Immortal Cultivation begins with time management. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 776 Shushan Ancestor Worship Ceremony. If we were to evaluate Sujian's swordsmanship, it would basically be a super enhanced version of Anzisu's. According to the scan results, Sujian definitely did not have a natural swordsmanship. However, this guy's swordsmanship attainments were indeed very strong, and this kind of swordsmanship purely based on his own practice was ultimately more admirable than Ling Yunpa's cheating. Ling Yunpa was secretly shocked, and Sujian was more and more satisfied with the fight, thinking that although this disciple King Feng's swordsmanship was average, that was based on the standard of the Jin and Renwei stage. If we consider his entry age, it is already outstanding to have such swordsmanship attainments, just like the speed of his cultivation improvement. Not bad. Sujian quickly stopped, and according to Ling Yunpa's specific situation, he gave some very accurate comments and suggestions. Here we can see the difference between Sujian and Anzisu. Although senior sister An is good at swordsmanship, her ability to teach people is really not very good, and she can only practice hard and let her junior brother understand it. With Sujian's sharp suggestions, Ling Yunpa was also enlightened, and had to admit that it was indeed a good thing to have a master. At least in terms of the sword controlling technique, neither the headmaster Ziwei nor the elder Shiding could teach him too much. Anzisu watched from the side, serving tea and water to Sujian from time to time, wiping the sweat off Ling Yunpa, and seemed to be even busier than the two of them. Although cultivators don't need to drink water or wipe their sweat, this is the girl's way of showing goodwill, so the two of them didn't have to refuse. But Sujian was drinking tea and watching his daughter wiping the sweat off his junior brother, and he immediately felt something was wrong. When Anzisu came to serve him tea, Sujian asked tentatively without making a sound, "Did you find a Taoist partner during your father's years of seclusion?" "No." Anzisu blushed and said in a low voice. As for the matter between him and his junior brother, if he had to tell the master everything in person, and there was a high probability that the master would ask him questions, it would be too embarrassing. Anzisu was too shy to say it, but everyone in Shushan knew about it. After all, it was when King Liu who reappeared in the world, and I think the master would know about it sooner or later. I will tell him when he asks. Sujian didn't think so much. When he heard Anzisu said that she had never found a Taoist partner, he was relieved. I said, "It's just a retreat for a period of time, how could my daughter be deceived?" To be fair, if you want to find a Taoist partner for Anzisu, Ling Yunpa, as the Qin sword master of this generation, is the best choice, with good looks, strong match, and a deep relationship. But Sujian has been in retreat for at least 100 years, and the impression of Anzisu in his heart is still the weak woman who just returned to Shushan with him because her mother died of old age. My Suo doesn't know anything, it's too early to find a Taoist partner now, too early. To some extent, it was the same mentality as many old fathers who didn't like their daughters to get married. Anyway, the excuse they all chose was she's still young, but the reality was another matter. Now that he had confirmed that his daughter had not been taken away by a pit, Sujian was relieved and continued to think about Ling Yunpa. To be honest, Sujian couldn't be more satisfied with this disciple that his daughter had accepted on behalf of her during his retreat. He had excellent talent, strong strength, a stable realm, and his natal sword was even a super god-level existence. As the new head of the Qisha sect of Shushan, Sujian's reputation was only circulated in the 3 pure ones of the righteous path and the 6 paths of the demon sect, but the Qin sword master was now almost known to everyone in the world of cultivation. Look, the Yuan family ancestor, a guest of Shushan, couldn't wait to come after hearing the news to see the true appearance of the Qin's human sword. Very good, very good. Looking at the Qin's human sword summoned by Ling Yunpa, the Yuan family patriarch looked left and right, praising it endlessly. "Can you try to chop it with a sword?" No. Before Sujian, the head of the sect, could speak, the elders rushed to stop him. "How can the human race's artifact be moved lightly?" Ha ha. The Yuan family patriarch also reacted, and the 4-piece Imade mountain was still outside, so he awkwardly said, "I was just joking." This joke was not funny, so no one laughed. Since the original Imade Golden Summit was divided into 4 parts, the D mountain was allocated the most debris of the Tianji square, so the new Patriarch Hall was planned to be built on the top of the D mountain in preparation for the ancestor worship ceremony. For the Yuan family patriarch who had a good relationship with Shushan, he did not have to wait until the day of the ancestor worship ceremony, but came to Shushan in advance to prepare for the ceremony and meet the Qin sword master who suddenly appeared. Of course, the latter was the main purpose. A few days later, on the day of the ancestral worship ceremony, Kunlun's Qisun Immortal and Ziwei Master, Penglai's Wangxiang Immortal and Kruandu Master also arrived here one after another. However, the war between Kunlun and Liu Du ended soon because of the sudden appearance of Qin Sword Master. Although Ling Yunpo was in Shushan at this time, it was not difficult to guess what happened. Except for the Ingadeo, everyone on the Six Paths didn't want to continue fighting. Now that the Qin Sword Master of Shushan has come out, it is just an excuse to stop and make a truce with Kunlun. As long as Kunlun can recover many resources in the Gyeongthong area, it will definitely be willing to agree to it in order to reduce losses. As for the plunder losses caused by destructive mining, they can only admit it. Of course, despite the truce with Liu Bo, Kunlun is even more worried about the current situation. The Shanking sect of Shushan, which was originally ranked second, suddenly had the Qin Sword Master suddenly appear. It would be self-deception to say that they have no idea about the status of the leader of the righteous path in the future. In addition, the new Seven Killers sect leader Su Jian's past experience is no secret, and he was a killer who fought with people all day long and chopped his fellow disciples to pieces. He didn't even spare his fellow disciples from Shushan, so how could we expect him to have any thoughts of peace with Kunlun? It's impossible. The two immortals came to the appointment with a pure motive, just to see the former human sword, Qin Suming. The Ziwei sect leader came with a deep sense of temptation and caution, trying to figure out what Shushan meant next. Not to mention the Khuandu sect leader, Penglai had always been clinging to Kunlun, and now it's not impossible to marry Shushan, and first evaluate the quality of Shushan. Ling Yunpa was helpless. As the Qin Sword Master of a noble status, he was surrounded by people like a museum treasure, which was really speechless. He could only summon the Qin Suming sword, let it float 3 inches above his palm, and then show it to the guests. TSK TSK TSK. This is the sound of the immortals exclaiming with interest. This is the sound of the elders pondering. Although the Qin Suming sword is completely black and does not look impressive, now that everyone knows its identity, it can also be explained as the divine light is restrained and the treasure is unknown. However, this King Feng's Hinran, apart from the natural talent of sword bone, I really can't find any special features that can make him the master of Qin sword. Chapter 777. Recharge and renewal required. Kunlun sent people to watch the ceremony this time, but did not bring Changzhen, which disappointed many guests who wanted to watch the excitement. Kunlun's first-grade golden elixir and Shushan's Qin sword master, these two young rising stars collided. What kind of sparks or explosions could be produced, which was what everyone was eager to see. Although the spectators wanted to see it very much, the parties involved might not be so. It was difficult to keep the incident in Shushan that day secret. When Qin sword master got angry, he could even beat the immortals. Kunlun naturally could not let Changzhen go head-to-head with Qin sword master. Therefore, the head of Kunlun did not bring Changzhen with him this time, also out of this concern. There is nothing to say about the ancestor worship ceremony. The historical origin of Shushan Shanking sect, everyone is from the sect, naturally familiar with it. It was just that the Qin sword master, Kim Heng's Hinran, was exhibited as a mascot throughout the whole process, and had no chance to show his strength. However, Qiu Changtai had already gone through this process of brushing his personal reputation after he formed the elixir, so Ling Yunpo had no objection. As for showing strength, just look at Mount Himalaya outside and you will know. He doesn't need to really use his sword. After the ancestral worship ceremony, the group went back to their own homes. What about the Qin sword master? Qisun Shanran asked slowly. Although Ling Yunpa was not unknown before becoming the Qin sword master, he was still not qualified to win to the eyes of other sects. A new star of the righteous path, well deserved. Ziwei's headmaster's answer was also very brief. A new star of the righteous path, that is to say, among the young golden elixir generation, Ling Yunpo is considered to be the top class, this is beyond doubt. But Qisun Shanran obviously didn't ask about this. The old man has lived for tens of thousands of years and has seen waves of so-called new stars. He actually just wanted to know how it compared to a rare Taoist genius like Changzhen. The Ziwei sect leader replied, a newcomer to the righteous path, implying that he is only a newcomer to the righteous path, and is not as good as Changzhen. This is a subtle statement unique to the people of Kunlun. The Red Pine Immortal did not say anything, but just said, the Consuming Sword is indeed worthy of its reputation. Very strong? The Ziwili sect leader asked. Of course it is strong. The Kunlun sect leader must have good eyesight, but the strength that can be seen in the Nascent Soul realm and the strength that can be seen by the immortals are not necessarily the same. The innate Chinky is indeed quite famous. The Red Pine Immortal said with emotion, it is probably the last ray of innate Chinky in the world since the beginning of the separation of heaven and earth. The Ziwili sect leader naturally understood what the immortal meant. Although the Chinky is rare in the world, it is only rare. But the innate Chinky is the wisp of Chinky produced when Pangu split the heaven and earth. It is the purest and most perfect extremely in thing in the world, and its rank is extremely high. The Consuming Sword forged with this key is not so much a fairy sword as it is an innate treasure in the shape of a fairy sword. If you use this thing to fight any fairy sword head-on, the latter will directly collapse. There is no other possibility. In addition, what makes Kunling quite worried is that the Chin Sword Master only activated the sword key that day and did not use any sword-related forbidden methods. As the treasure of the ancient human race, the Consuming Sword is naturally sealed with various forbidden methods. It's a pity that the H is too long to mention it, and the ancients often like to briefly mention it when writing history, and they often say the sword comes out, and corpses are everywhere. Is this sword out the sword key? Or the sword-related Taoist method? No one knows. Of course, the head of Ziwili sect could not regard the previous ability of Kingping Sword as the sword method of Consuming Sword. The sword energy can split a mounting, and the sword method is likely to destroy the world, otherwise it would not be worthy at the rank of the innate Chinky. In short, although the Consuming Sword has come out, it cannot change the world in a short period of time. The head of Ziwili sect said slowly, Zhen ranking Feng is only at the Jindan level after all. Consuming Sword must be used by the immortal level, which is not difficult to infer from ancient books. Although I don't know what method King Fengzhen used last time to successfully activate the Consuming Sword, I think it is not a method that can be easily reused. Otherwise, the current Shushan Shang King sect will have a completely different attitude towards Kunlin. Of course. Immortal Kisan agreed and said, Changzhen, Qingying and others need to improve their cultivation as soon as possible. As long as Immortal Changzhen can enter the realm of Daluo Jingxian before the Qin Sword Master passes away, Kunlun will not be at a disadvantage even if it competes with Shushan for the position of the leader of the Orthodox sect. Of course, even Immortal Kisan has no confidence in facing the Consuming Sword. Both of them are old monsters. Even if they're worried in their hearts, they will not show it on their faces. They just talk about other situations, such as how their own strength will change after the power reshuffle of the Shushan high level, how their attitude to the outside world will change, how the six paths will react, etc. On the other side, on the way back to the East China Sea, Immortal Wang Xiang and the head of Xuandu were also talking about similar content, which will not be mentioned here. Ling Yunpa was very busy during this period, receiving guests from all walks of life and building relationships with his master Su Jian. He even interacted less with senior sister Anne. After the ancestral worship ceremony was over, he finally had time to ask Su Mingjian in his sea of consciousness. Su, who should I call? Su Mingjian asked with a smile, you think I'm your senior sister Anne, right? Hehe, isn't this a better way to say it? Ling Yunpa was not embarrassed at all, and said with a smile, Su Ming, since everyone has been frank with each other, you can now tell me what kind of Taoism you have. Qin Su Mingjian was a little speechless. This sword master really has no reserve at all. Now that he knows his true identity, he has no awe at all. However, the Taoism on the sword is not a secret, so it told the whole situation. First of all, no matter what kind of Taoism on the sword, only the immortal level can use it. Secondly, the forbidden method on the Consuming Sword is called innate Qin 5 elements formation, which is simply a powerful spell of various Yin 5 elements. When he pretended to be Kingping Sword before, the various water-based forbidden methods he used were actually the Basua spells among the Yin 5 elements. The Yang 5 elements emphasizes being strong and powerful, and nothing can stop it. The Yin 5 elements emphasize being endless and everlasting. Although the sword method of the Consuming Sword is not as strong as that of the Tianzhenmali sword, it has a relatively larger range and consumes less true energy. However, no matter how small the consumption is, it is not something that a Jindan Zhenren can afford. Unless the Consuming Sword is asked to spontaneously lower the upper limit of the strength of the Taoism to a level that a Jindan Zhenren can easily use, then the combat power will be similar to that of the previous Kingping Sword. As for transferring the consumption of true energy, unless he encounters a life-threatening situation, Ling Yunpoxin knows that our Jin will not arbitrarily spend nearly a huge amount of spiritual energy to help him recharge and renew the Qin Sword Master. In other words, most of the time, the Qin's human sword can only be used as a nuclear weapon for deterrence, but it can't be used at all times like the last time when the sword slashed Ime. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 778. Master and Disciple Kindness. Ling Yunpo was naturally prepared for the fact that he needed to recharge and renew his Qin Sword Master every time he used it. The reason was simple. If our Jin could burn his spiritual power without any burden and use the Qin's human sword 365 days a year, he would have killed the 4 sects and snatched all the fragments of the booty and stone. Would he need to play that game of infernal affairs here? The existence of the Qin's human sword, in addition to being a nuclear strategic trump card, is more used for conventional deterrence and reputation. Needless to say, the 4 petals of Mount Amade are still there. Of course, there is no need to elaborate on the latter. The significance of the identity of the Qin Sword Master to the sword cultivators of the world is actually far greater than his own strength. Let's take Shushan as an example. In the past few days, there has been an endless stream of real people from various peaks visiting King Luo Peak, almost perfectly replicating the grand scene when Qiu Chang's Haiyan formed the first-grade golden elixir, and the entrance of Jinlan Cave Mansion was packed with people. But unlike the popular Changzhen, most of the Shushan immortals who came to visit King Hing and Jing Xiao this time came to make peace. What are they talking about? Of course, it was the past hatred. Because of Su Jian's domineering and strong behavior back then, many hatreds were created among the Shushan fellow disciples, and these hatreds blossomed through interpersonal relationships such as master and apprentice, brothers, and Taoist partners. In the end, a large group of people in Shushan were unhappy with King Luo Peak, and even went to trouble Anzisu during Su Jian's retreat. But although there are many people, they are not all of the Shushan Shangqing sect. After all, there are people in the various peaks who were not in the hatred network. Now that Su Jian has come out of retrieve to take over as the headmaster, and King Hin has become the Qin Sword Master, King Luo Peak has also turned over a new leaf. If the other peaks still don't recognize the current situation, they are advised to become brothers in distress with Xiun Peak. Since Elder Minghui was killed as a traitor, all his disciples have scattered and gone to other peaks, leaving only the abandoned Xiun Peak Taoist temple standing alone on the top of the mountain. Although the Qin Sword Master does not have the notoriety of slashing people with his own sword at all like the mowing sword immortal, his deeds of splitting Mount Amade with a sword are too scary after all. In addition, no one wants to be suddenly identified as a traitor one day, and then the mountain where they live is split by a sword. Therefore, they quickly counted the real people who had not made enemies with Anzesu, and hurried to King Luo Peak to make peace and apologize. As a result, the entrance of the King Luo Peak Taoist temple was crowded with guests for more than 10 consecutive days, and the threshold of the Taoist temple was almost trampled down. Although Anzisu was very good at fighting, she is completely incompetent in terms of hospitality. Ling Yunpo can only ask her to continue to be a background cloth. Usually, she just sits by and smiles. When the guests talk to her, she just says yes, good, indeed. Ling Yunpo has to do the reception of guests himself. Although this matter is boring, Ling Yunpo has experience after all, and is familiar with it. He is also very skilled in dealing with guests, and it is impossible to find fault with it. After Su Jian heard about this, he even rushed over from the ancestral hall to see it once. Seeing that Ling Yunpo is indeed versatile, has a wide network of contacts, and responds very appropriately, he can't help but be very relieved. Although he is not good at interpersonal communication, it is just because of his arrogance brought by his strong strength, not really low emotional intelligence. Naturally, he also knows that Anzesu, as his daughter, is also a dull person in this regard. Kim Fen disciple can support the face of my King Luo Peak alone in this regard, and the master is really satisfied. Su Jian, who had thought of this, stayed to talk with Ling Yunpo and Anzisu for a few more words, even though he was busy with his duties as the headmaster. Although Anzisu respected his father very much, for some reason, he always addressed him as master instead of father, and treated Su Jian with the courtesy of a disciple. There was no intimacy between them. Su Jian was used to this, and after asking about his daughter's situation, he began to encourage Ling Yunpo again. You have worked hard these days. No, no. Ling Yunpo said modestly, sneering in his heart. Compared with these days, the time when you were in seclusion was really hard. Su Jian probably realized the problem with his words, and hurriedly said with emotion, during that time when I was in seclusion, King Luo Peak was supported by Yuan Xue. Yuan Xue, first Ling Yunpo, then Nzesu. It seems that this cheap master is very clear about who is more useful to him, but it is estimated that he just blurted out what he thought in his heart, and did not deliberately use this word order to appease Ling Yunpo. However, this character is really in the same vein as Nzesu. With Ling Yunpo's experienced eyes, of course he instantly saw Su Jian's thoughts. First of all, this master, like senior sister Anne, has a strong family concept. What is a family concept? It is to divide the people around you into family members and outsiders. Family members are absolutely trustworthy, so the treatment must not be bad. To use a more popular term, it is protecting shortcomings, completely unreasonable protection. Since Ling Yunpo is already a disciple and has made so many contributions to King Luo Peak, he is undoubtedly a family member, so Su Jian must value him very much. However, no matter how much he values him, Su Jian has been in seclusion for many years. The master and the disciple are not familiar with each other, and they didn't know each other until not long ago. Su Jian would certainly feel awkward and uncomfortable. On the one hand, he wants to be close to protect his shortcomings, but on the other hand, he is really unfamiliar with each other, so he must get familiar with each other as soon as possible. And Su Jian is the teacher, so of course he will choose the nothing to say mode, and try to close the relationship between the two in a short time. Ling Yunpo knows this, and naturally has a plan to deal with it. Remember the bitterness and think of the sweetness. Although the two are not familiar with each other, they have something in common after all. King Luo Peak and Nzesu. Since the master has spoken in advance, he must take over the topic and talk about when you were in seclusion, King Luo Peak was so unfavorable, and how much suffering my sister and I suffered. Speaking of suffering, seeing Su Jian's ashamed expression, Ling Yunpo immediately understood and quickly put away the original bitter topic, and turned to talk about but after unremitting efforts, my senior sister and I finally did this and that, and the tone was lifted again. You know, although Su Jian is a protected person, he just doesn't take it hard. Now as the head of Shushan, all the peaks are vying to admit their mistakes to King Luo Peak. He can't say I don't forgive, I want to get it, otherwise Shushan will probably disintegrate directly. When Ling Yunpo talked about the past, Su Jian felt regretful and helpless now. But when Ling Yunpo talked about the achievements he made later, Su Jian felt that the young generation will eventually have a promising future, and his mood suddenly turned from gloomy to affectionate. When Ling Yunpo was talking, Nzesu didn't bother to tear down his junior brother, but just continued to say yes, junior brother, you're right. In Su Jian's eyes, all of these naturally became proof that Ling Yunpo was right. It can only be said that although Su Jian has outstanding attainments in swordsmanship, his ability in some aspects is far behind someone else. After leaving King Luo Peak, the Shushan headmaster was in a good mood. Just as he was about to return to the ancestral hall to handle government affairs, he met Elder Yuzheng passing by nearby, and the two greeted each other. Seeing that he was in a good mood, Yuzheng thought that the old father-in-law seemed to be very satisfied with his son-in-law. It makes sense. After all, he is the Qin sword master and has been in love with Jing Xiaohunren for many years. How can Su Jian not be satisfied? I just don't know, and the two can become Taoist couples. Su Jian has caused too much hatred in the past. Although he is now the new headmaster and has the support of Chanmei Xianren in secret, his prestige is still unstable. If the Qin sword master and Jing Xiaohunren can officially become Taoist couples, it will definitely be good for him to consolidate his position as headmaster. Well, I have to go over and remind him. Chapter 779. Are you still in the dark? As Elder Yuzheng expected, Su Jian was in a very happy mood this time. Of course, the reason for his happiness might be different from what Elder Yuzheng thought, but he was completely unaware of it and was just thinking about how to give some advice without making a sound. When he was the headmaster, Yuzheng and Su Jian had a pretty good relationship. After all, the latter was a disciple of the Immortal. Although Chanmei favored Taoist Master Duoan for a period of time, which led to everyone generally despising Taoist Master Qisha, Yuzheng, as the headmaster, did not favor one over the other. Su Jian was the kind of person who would not deliberately pick a fight with him unless he was deliberately provoked. Qisha. Elder Yuzheng caught up and said, I forgot to ask you, after becoming the headmaster, are you familiar with the affairs of the sect? The affairs of the sect? Su Jian smiled faintly. What's the difficulty? Confident, unruly, and unruly, this is the image of Su Jian in the minds of most Shushan monks. As for the image of a kind, gentle, and talkative elder, that is the special version of Anzisu and Ling Yunpo. Elder Yuzheng was speechless, because the Su Jian had only one way to deal with daily affairs. Let's see what happens. Strictly speaking, the three words "let's see what happens" are not impossible to say. After all, the Shushan Shanking sect is a large sect, and there are countless elders and deacons in charge of various affairs, and the specific affairs are as numerous as the hairs on a cow. If every matter must be reported to the headmaster and asked to do it personally, then the Shushan headmaster does not need to practice, and can just be a machine for handling political affairs. But Su Jian doesn't care what the matter is, from beginning to end, there are only three words: let's see what happens. Maybe the new Shushan headmaster thinks that they are all trivial matters, but there are indeed important matters involving people, money, soldiers and punishments. Without the headmaster's nod, how dare the people below take the initiative? If they handled improperly, they will be blamed. So they went to the Longmei Immortal again. In the past, the Longmei Immortal was still quite enthusiastic about political affairs, or it can be said that he was the immortal who was most enthusiastic about running a sect among the three pure ones of the Orthodox Church. But since he made a serious principled mistake in dealing with the two real people King Hing and Jing Xiao, Chang Mei Xianren kept his word and shut himself off, completely ignoring the affairs of the sect. After being turned away by Chang Mei Xianren, everyone was helpless, and someone actually came to Elder Yujing to ask the former headmaster for advice. Elder Yujing did not have much desire for power, otherwise he would not have given up the position of headmaster so neatly, but his loyalty to the Shushan Shanking sect was not fake. When he heard that the new headmaster did not care about anything, the people below are like headless flies, which was too much, so he could only make decisions on his behalf. But he had a lot of ideas, and asked these elders and deacons not to execute directly, but to take the decision to Su Jian and go through the request process again. Since Su Jian had taken care of it, it was obvious that he was too lazy to deal with these things, so he naturally approved them all. As a result, the Shushan Shanking sect continued to operate miraculously without stopping when the headmaster did not care about anything at all, which was really incomprehensible. When Elder Yuzheng heard Su Jian say that handling government affairs was a piece of cake, he was speechless. After being speechless, he was annoyed again. Now I am no longer the headmaster of Shushan. I have not enjoyed the status and rights, but I have to continue to do the work. In the end, you, the headmaster of the righteous sect, still think it is easy. Don't you really know who helped you do these things? Thinking of this, Elder Yuzheng even had an impulse. Just learn from the long-proud immortal to shut himself up. Let the righteous headmaster of Shushan worry about Shushan. Let's see if he can say nonsense like how difficult is this. But he still remembered what he was here for, so he said casually. Kim Fen is now the Qin Sword Master, and his reputation is very high, but he is only at the Jindan level after all, and he still needs your advice as the master. Elder Yuzheng knew Su Jian was arrogant. If he directly asked him to marry his daughter to the Qin Sword Master to consolidate his prestige and power, Su Jian would probably say, I am just the Shushan Master, I can do it myself, why do I need the help of my daughter? So he changed the way he said it, asking Su Jian to give more advice to the Qin Sword Master, hinting that he should strengthen the relationship. This was originally a master and apprentice, and now they are father-in-law and son-in-law, making the relationship even closer. Isn't it beautiful? Su Jian really liked this, so he nodded and said, of course, but I see that his cultivation level has improved rapidly. I think even if I don't urge him, he will practice diligently. Yujing knew that Su Jian didn't understand at all, and his thinking was still at the level of master and apprentice, so he had to continue. However, the relationship between Master Jing Xiao and Master King Fen is very close. In the past, whether it was the trip to the Locking Demon Tower or the southern expedition to the 10,000 Mountains, they were almost inseparable. Since they're so loving, why don't they become Taoist couples as soon as possible? Su Jian still didn't understand his hint, but said proudly, of course, we in King Luo Peak have always emphasized support and friendship. Su is like me, so naturally I won't treat my junior brother badly. Elder Yujing was speechless, thinking that Su Jian wouldn't know the relationship between his daughter and the Qin Sword Master, right? Did he really think they were still a pure relationship between a senior sister and a junior brother? Both of them practiced the asking love flow. Who were they asking about? Don't you have any idea? He wanted to continue hinting, but he had no confidence in Su Jian's ability to read hints, so he could only grit his teeth and say bluntly. Jian Xiao's Hunran just formed the golden elixir, and she has already achieved the flow of love in the heart-searching cave. It's so fast, it's really enviable. Su Jian. My daughter has achieved the flow of love. When? Who is the object? How come I don't know? He was in a state of panic. Seeing this, Elder Yuzheng knew that the other party finally understood, and hurriedly found a reason to leave. Su Jian hurriedly turned around and hurried back to King Luo Peak without saying anything, but he found nothing. He didn't know that Nzisu took Ling Yunpo out for a drink again. There were too many guests recently, and Nzisu forced himself to endure it. Now his patience has been exhausted, so he insisted that Ling Yunpo close the door for half a day and sneak out to drink. Most of the monks of Shushan live on the top of the mountain, while there are various markets in the valley. Although there are monks coming and going, there are more mountain people. They don't know the name of Qin Sword Master. It is a good place to avoid visiting and have a drink. The two came to the second floor of the restaurant and found an empty seat to sit down. Nzisu couldn't wait to order a pot of weidiao, a plate of chicken and a plate of beef, and then urged the waiter to serve the wine and food. Ling Yunpo was used to seeing the beautiful and gentle appearance of the senior sister, but now she was so impatient, and he also found it interesting, so he slapped the table and urged the waiter. The waiter hadn't come yet, and suddenly someone below was discussing loudly, and it seemed to be a monk. Now that the Qin Sword Master has come out in Shushan, the leader of the Orthodox religion should be our Shushan. That's right. Kumling can't win quickly against the Six Paths. It seems that Yun's Thongqi line has changed its master. What qualifications does it have to continue to be called a leader? Chang Zheng's Hinran, a first-grade golden elixir, is nothing more than that. Chapter 780. I told my father a long time ago. Hearing what everyone said, Ling Yunpo also secretly felt that it was not good. It was obvious that if Shushan wanted to compete with Kumlan for the leader of the Orthodox sect, Ling Yunpo and Qiu Changtian would inevitably be pushed to the forefront, and even pushed out by the two sects to fight to the death. How painful it would be to fight yourself. From the perspective of character setting, Qiu Changtian must not lose, so Ling Yunpo can only lose. But first of all, how could the Qin Sword Master lose? In the minds of ordinary cultivators, as soon as my Qin's human sword was pulled out, the Kumlan Sky Pillar should immediately break into 4 petals, and the Red Pine Immortal should kneel down and beg for mercy, okay? Secondly, if I forcefully find a reason to lose, Shushan will definitely regard it as a great shame. With the protective personality of Senior Sister and Master Su Jian, it is really hard to say what they will do. After all, isn't it because the Qin's human sword is too powerful that I, the true Manking Fen, am in a dilemma? Hectares. Su Mingjian responded with a faint hectares. Although he didn't say much, it was full of sarcasm. Ling Yunpo was too embarrassed to blame others, so he was busy pouring wine for Senior Sister Anne. The two drank until they were slightly tipsy, and then slowly returned to King Luo Peak. At the entrance of the Taoist temple, Ling Yunpo sent Senior Sister back first, and then found a place nearby to prepare to reload the game. Nzisu returned to the Taoist temple happily, and saw Su Jian standing in the middle of the lobby with a gloomy face. He couldn't help but feel a little confused. After a while, a fierce quarrel broke out. I want to verify the luck flow of some other school, why does the master forcefully ask? Nzisu said angrily, my path, can't I make the decision? Nonsense. Su Jian was also furious, how can you verify the luck flow at all without your parents checking? Did your master have parents checking in back then? Nzisu asked back excitedly. Your grandparents are gone, so of course I can only make my own decision. Su Jian said angrily, but I am still alive. If you want to testify the flow of love, how can you not tell your father in advance? I told my father through the stone wall that day. Nzisu was also very angry, and even called him father. Su Jian was immediately choked up, explaining through the stone wall, what's the point? I'm in seclusion, and I can't hear. So, he could only slow down his tone and comfort her. It's not that I don't want you to testify the flow of love, I'm just worried that you'll meet the wrong person. Master, don't you approve of your character? Nzisu asked back coldly. That's not the case. Su Jian frowned and said, Kim Feng's character is naturally good, but a good character does not mean that he is suitable for you. You have been raised by me and your mother since you were a child, and you have hardly dealt with other people. You don't even understand the basic ways of dealing with people, let alone human love. As a senior sister, loving your junior brother is one thing, and love is another thing. Are you sure you can really tell the difference? Nzisu was speechless, but her temper was strong after all. She immediately turned around and turned her back to her father, and said coldly, "This love flow has been proven, and there is no reason to change it. Even the long-proud immortal of the time could not force me to bow my head. If Master insists on separating my junior brother and I, it would mean that I would destroy my own path." After that, she left without looking back, leaving Su Jian, whose face was half blue and half pale, in the lobby, unable to speak for a long time. Ling Yunpo didn't know that senior sister and Su Jian were arguing over there, and just calmly ordered, "Read the game in Penglai." Location 3. Penglai Yu King Temple, Tiangong Workshop. Character Identity: Luoyan. Mirror Flower Water Moon template is overwritten, and time travel is in progress. Arriving in Penglai, Luoyan estimated the time point. At this time, Wei Dongliu had not yet become the co-leader of the Six Paths, Kunlun and the Demon Sect had not yet started a full-scale war, and Mount Emma had not yet split into 4 petals. The time point of this plotline was so early that Luoyan didn't even remember when he saved the game. Wait, what should I do next? He turned around and looked around, and found that this should be his study. On the table in the study, there was a crystal-clear glass branch, and the shape was also very lifelike. What is this? Luoyan picked up the branch and examined it carefully. The characteristics of one smell, 1000 enlightenments were activated, and he realized that it was the 7 treasures body glazed branch that the Wangxiang immortal gave him after he passed through the Golden Secret Realm. This thing is said to be able to cleanse the mind and increase the chance of sudden enlightenment, but sudden enlightenment itself is a mysterious thing. How high can the chance be after the chance is increased? Luoyan was puzzled, so he simply put it in the Tiangong treasure bag first, and then pushed the door out. Junior sister Shiking has now come to the Tiangong workshop and is learning the basic way of making tools from the third sister Liangruo. Liangruo has already reached the great perfection of the god level, and now her goal is to try to break through the bottleneck and enter the root-seeking level. However, this bottleneck breakthrough ultimately requires an opportunity, so she temporarily stopped her daily breathing and began to concentrate on studying the way of making tools. Shili's sword-making skills have become more and more advanced. Although the quality has not increased, the cost and price have been reduced again and again. Now it is so popular that it is sweeping across China, squeezing out those small sword-making workshops that originally competed with Tiangong Fang. After Luoyan learned about this, he was also dumbfounded. You said that our Tiangong Fang, which specializes in high-end weapon making, suddenly began to switch to the affordable market in the field of sword making. Why? Hearing her husband ask this question, Shili replied, "Of course it is to avoid competing with my senior brother." Or does my husband think that my current sword-making skills can compete with my senior brother? Luoyan suddenly realized. The sword-making skills of senior brother Ling Yushu are naturally unparalleled in the world now. Any high-level cultivator who wants to customize a flying sword will definitely think of Ling Yushu first, not Shiluli, the Jinden's Hinran. If Shiluli had to compete with him in this regard, one thing would be that she would get half the result with twice the effort, and the other would involve interests, which would inevitably damage the relationship between them. Since Ling Yushu had already set up his own business, this favor would be reduced by 1 point, so it was better to avoid it if possible. However, if we specialize in the affordable market, what should we do with our connections? Luoyan raised the question again. One problem with the affordable market is that most purchases are paid for with spirit stones. However, for orders from high-level cultivators, they can ask for rare natural treasures to offset the price, and they can also make achievements in terms of personal connections. The reason why Elder Shiding became the world's #1 weapon maker was mainly because he won the recognition of many high-level cultivators. Now that Shilili's sword making is taking the affordable route, although there is no shortage of spirit stone income, the materials for making the weapon will inevitably be affected. Even the further she develops, the more people will have the stereotype that Shilili's sword making is not good, which will definitely affect her subsequent transformation and upgrading. Shilili didn't seem to have any good strategy. She hummed for a long time and couldn't answer. Luoyan felt distressed when he saw her at a loss. It would be great if she could improve her sword-making skills quickly. Sword-making, wait, would there be a way to make Sumin sword? Chapter 781 Shen and Ding. When it comes to the Sunday and Moon swords, there is a question that is really hard to explain and is often overlooked. How were such artifacts forged? There are many artifacts left over from ancient times, but not many are clearly made by the great human beings. Among them, 3 artifacts are the most famous because they have prevented a huge world-destroying disaster. The sky-repairing stone was made by Nuwei. After the sky was repaired, the demons from outer space could not easily attack the underground world on a large scale. The Shannon Cauldron was made by Shannon. After suppressing the Jiuzhou veins, the ghosts of Jiaowangquan were sealed in the underworld. The Yin-Yang sword was forged by Fixit. It killed the demons that far outnumbered the human race and forced them directly into the East Empire realm. It is precisely because of these three sets of human artifacts that the human race was saved from distress that they have become famous and spread to this day, surpassing those artifacts that are obviously very powerful but unknown. How was I forged? Su Mingjian was amused by this question. Master Sword Master, do you remember how you were born? Luo Yan was immediately choked up, and after a while he said, who was forged first, the Sun Sunmali sword or you? If the order of birth is Su Mingjian first, then the Sunmali sword, then Su Mingjian may be able to see the casting process of the Sunmali sword. The Sunmali sword came out first. Su Mingjian said faintly, I was originally forged to be used as a backup for the Sunmali sword. Backup? It's to prevent the human race from being helpless immediately if something goes wrong with the Sunmali sword. Su Mingjian replied. Luo Yan immediately understood. If you think about it carefully, isn't it the same for other artifacts? The piece of sky repairing stone I'm looking for is the backup made by Nuwei, isn't it? Come to think of it, I remember that Shannon Ding originally refined 10 of them. Su Mingjian suddenly asked Kunlun Jin, 9 of them were used to suppress the 9 states veins, and 1 was left as a backup. Do you know where the backup one is? It seems to be in Shenangjia, Kunlun Jin replied. But over the years, the Shenangjia mountains must have been explored cleanly, right? Su Mingjian said. Well, but if it had been discovered, it would not have remained unknown until now. Kunlun Mirror pondered and said, a rare item like the Shenanding must only be obtained by the big sects, and if these big sects can obtain the treasure, they will definitely use it. It is unlikely that they will hide it secretly. Master Sword Master, how about we go find the Shenanding? Su Mingjian said with a smile, don't you just want to find superb sword-making techniques for your wife? It is said that the Shenanding is engraved with all the secret techniques of the human race at the time, such as casting, alchemy, and formations. Sword-making must be included in it. Oh? Luo Yan was immediately very interested, but then he thought about it and asked, why are these secret techniques engraved on the Shenanding? Because Shannon was a person who liked to study miscellaneous subjects. Kunlun Mirror replied, he was best at identifying spiritual herbs and refining alchemy, but he was also knowledgeable and proficient in other aspects. Hearing what the mirror and the sword said, Luo Yan had the idea of exploring Shenangjia. As Su Mingjian said, theoretically, the Shenangjia mountains have probably been searched for hundreds of thousands of years since ancient times. Just hearing the name, who doesn't know that the Shenanding, the last remnant of the Shannon clan, is likely to be hidden inside? However, Luo Yan has a scanner after all, plus the talent of hearing 1,000 understandings, and is best at seeing the truth from clues, as well as Shi Ningzi's ability to defy the heavens, so he is full of confidence in this trip. When I came to Shilili's sword-making workshop, I saw her taking the sword embryo out of the molten iron, and then using a sword chisel to outline the formation on it. The sword-making workshop, as soon as you hear it, is a very hot and sweaty place. In fact, it is indeed the case. The indoor temperature is at least above 50 degrees, and the heat waves are still rolling out from the furnace and magic tools, making people subconsciously feel that the people working here are all shirtless and muscular strong men. But Shilili is a Jindan Zenron after all, just wearing a single coat with a cooling formation, and then began to concentrate on continuing to work. As her hands turned, the patterns were skillfully carved on the sword embryo, full of rhythmic and geometric beauty. Luo Yan knew that enchanting the flying sword was the most critical moment in the sword-making process, so he did not dare to disturb her. After Shilili finished carving, she placed the red-hot sword embryo into a container filled with liquid beside her, turned around and asked, my husband, do you have something to ask me? Are you okay? Luo Yan pointed at the sword embryo and asked in surprise. Although he majored in forging tripods and formations, it was impossible for him to know nothing about sword-making. Every time the sword embryo was carved with patterns, a layer of Taoism was attached to it. Next, it had to be reheated, then placed in molten iron for sealing, and then carved again, and so on. In this way, only one carving means only one layer of Taoism, and it has not been sealed yet, which will consume more true essence. Can such a flying sword really be sold? Shilili understood what Luo Yan meant and replied calmly. If you want to seal it, the price will be even more expensive. You are not willing to pay for this little spiritual stone. Luo Yan asked subconsciously at first, and then realized that casual cultivators did not seem to have much income. What about the Taoism? Don't you need to seal multiple layers of Taoism? No. Shilli replied, from the market feedback, casual cultivators' requirements for flying sword Taoism are that the more powerful the better. If 2 layers of Taoism are engraved, they will definitely use the more powerful one and discard the other set of Taoism, so there is no need to seal multiple layers of Taoism. What about auxiliary and defensive Taoism? Luo Yan asked. They won't use it. Shilli replied. Okay, Luo Yan had the talent of hearing thousands of enlightenments after all, and he reacted after a few turns in his mind. Most casual cultivators have low cultivation and no defensive ability, so they tend to bombard their opponents with all their strength when fighting. As long as the opponent falls, I don't need to defend. It's a very simple thinking, but it fits the characteristics of casual cultivators. My husband, do you have something to ask me? Shilli continued to ask. Luo Yan reorganized his thoughts and asked, are you willing to go with me to explore Shenangjia? Shilli was silent for a moment and asked, my husband, are you going to search for the traces of Shenangjia? In fact, the number of times the temple has explored Shenangjia in previous years is at least 800, but every time it has been fruitless. It is said that there is no relics that may have left clues, let alone Shenangjia. The entire Shenangjia mountain area is full of trees and wild beasts, and there is no trace of human beings left. At present, the temple suspects that the area may be just a rumor, and it is not actually the area where Shannon lived in the past. Luo Yan was completely unmoved. Those miscellaneous exploration teams in Yuking Temple can be compared with us as a couple. He smiled and said, in that case, why don't you tell me a fortune to see how the luck of this trip is? Shilli nodded, then took out a copper coin and started to tell the fortune. After a while, she frowned slightly and said thoughtfully, strange, I can go. What's strange about it? Luo Yan asked. The hexagram shows 2 results at the same time. Shilli replied, nothing and something. Chapter 782 Luo Yan wants to defend the orthodoxy. Luo Yan's current status in Penglai Yuking Temple is naturally not as high as that of the first-grade Golden Elixir and Shin Sword Master. If he tells others about the innate 5-element Chaos Divine Light, he will definitely be able to quickly raise his importance. However, Luo Yan has to play a hypocritical role. The benefits of pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger are far greater than being at the forefront. Secondly, if he is carried out by the sect to compete with Qiu Chang's Hein and Lim Yunpo, and a 3-way fight for the top spot is really disgusting. Of course, as the master of Tiangong Fang, his current status is not low, so he still has to report to the sect before going out. After reporting, Luo Yan took Shilli with him and flew towards Shenzhou. Shilli's divination results are quite strange. Nothing and something, which is like saying that if you throw this coin, it must be the front or the back, which is a 100% bullshit. Who cares, it won't lose money to go around anyway. Luo Yan was thinking casually like this, and suddenly he shuddered again. Wait, it seems that every time I think it is a relaxing journey, something unexpected will happen halfway. It is better not to be a pessimist and just be careful. The 2 flew across the Angzhou area on their swords and headed straight for the Shenangjia Mountains. Because of the steep terrain and rugged terrain, there are no villages in the mountains and few woodcutters go deep into the mountains. Instead, it has become a paradise for wild animals. Luo Yan flew through the sky and saw at least 20 to 30 monsters wandering in the forest below. There are no relics. He stopped the sword light again, calculated silently for a moment, and confirmed that he had scanned the entire mountain range and did not miss any place. However, no clues were found. If it really exists, then the Shannon ruins are obviously not that easy to find, otherwise it would not have remained undiscovered for more than 100,000 years. But even my scan failed to work. It seems that there is a question mark whether this thing exists. Luo Yan was thinking about it in boredom, and then he heard Shilli, who was telling fortunes next to him, suddenly said hurriedly, "Husband, there is danger. Get out of the way." The 2 of them turned their swords around and quickly fell into the forest. There happened to be a high slope and a stream in that forest. Luo Yan quickly scanned and found that there was a recess behind the stream, so he quickly pushed Shilli to hide behind it. The 2 hid in the recess, holding their breath and concentrating, and retracted all their spiritual consciousness to avoid being sensed by people outside. But Jin's scan had nothing to do with spiritual consciousness. It was essentially a kind of calculation. Luo Yan scanned the surroundings unscrupulously and frantically, and soon found 3 people coming in the distance. one man and two women. The man was an old man. Although he was wearing a dirty linen robe, there was a faint gleam in his eyes, which made people dare not underestimate him. The women were a woman and a young girl. Luo Yan was familiar with these two people. They were Xiao, the Jialong who was supposed to be in the East Empire realm, and Long Xiaoqi, who had dealt with Wei Dongliu before. These three people were from the Dragon Clan. And the old man was of a high rank. He didn't look like a Immortal Cultivator, but rather like an ancestor of the Dragon Clan. Luo Yan quickly asked Arjun to strengthen the illusion and seal the entrance behind the waterfall tightly to prevent it from being detected by the other party. Although she really couldn't see the outside world and didn't release her divine sense, she probably had confirmed that there was no one around. The conversation of the three people above the sea of trees was a little loud, but she could hear it clearly. "Your Majesty," Xiao asked, "is this the place?" "It is here." The old man laughed gently. In the past, Shannon used his great magical powers to open up a space here for treasure hiding. Although the interior was fully built, he died unexpectedly before the external entrance was built, resulting in the loss of the conventional way to enter this secret realm. "In other words, you can enter in an unconventional way?" Long Xiaoqi asked from the side. "That's right." The old man's tone suddenly turned cold, and he said grimly, "As long as it is a secret cave, you can use the secret method of space to break the barrier and sneak into it. But this method is too dangerous, and if you are not careful, the transmission fails, and you will be torn into pieces by the storm outside the space. Later, during the transmission process, you are not allowed to make any unnecessary movements to prevent the transmission from failing." As he said that, the old man took out a bead. Luo Yan looked at it with his spiritual sense and found that it was a dragon bead. The so-called dragon bead is the golden elixir of the dragon. When it is cultivated to a high level, it can be spit out to hurt people. Luo Yan didn't know whether the dragon bead was the old man's demon elixir. He just saw him throw the bead into the air, and it immediately sank into the void, causing a large number of dents and swaying ripples, which made people feel dizzy. "If you don't leave now, when will you leave?" The old man suddenly shouted loudly, pushing Xiao and Long Xiaoqi into the ripples, and then he stepped into it. Soon, the ripples returned to calm. There was no sound outside. Xiao cast another hexagram and calculated that the previous danger was gone. She breathed a sigh of relief. "Husband," she said worriedly, "since there is no entrance to the secret realm and we don't have the secret method to break through the space, why don't we go back to Pengliu King Temple and report this to the headmaster first?" "Well," Luo Yan pondered for a moment, and suddenly realized something, and said, "If we go back like this, we will get nothing. If we force our way in, we will get something, right?" Xiao thought for a while and nodded. "Maybe. The art of calculation is ultimately just predicting the future, but it is impossible to calculate everything. Husband, if we force our way in, there may be gains, but there are also corresponding risks. And according to the hexagram, the old man is extremely dangerous, and it is very likely that he is a demon immortal. Even so, do you still want to go in?" Xiao's attitude is very clear. For some uncertain gains, it is too risky to forcefully break in. But Luo Yan has other considerations. First, he had Arjun's help, so he could easily deceive the other party. Secondly, he had the Suming sword in his hand. If it didn't work, he could just knock Li unconscious first, and then kill him with the sword. Even the Long Mei Immortal couldn't stand it, so no matter how powerful the old dragon was, could he be more powerful than the Liangyi Microdust sword? So what Li thought was extremely dangerous was bearable in Luo Yan's opinion. But of course these cannot be said openly, so Luo Yan pretended to be righteous and said, "Luo, according to what the old man said, the Shannon thing is very likely hidden in the secret realm. If you go back to Yu King Temple to report the news, and let the Shannon thing be obtained by the demon cult, it may endanger the survival of the orthodox Taoist tradition. In the past, the demon cult surrounded my Penglai, causing huge losses, and hundreds of families mourned. Such a tragedy must never happen again." Luo Yan spoke these righteous words in a sonorous and powerful manner, without any hesitation, which immediately infected Xiao. Thinking of her father who died at the hands of the demon cult elder, she nodded and said, "In that case, I will do as my husband said." Luo Yan took out the Tianyu divine shuttle and instructed a Jin in the sea of consciousness. A Jin, lock the direction of the old dragon breaking through the space barrier for me. Chapter 783. The innate 5 elements divine light. After injecting his true essence into the Tianji divine shuttle and using the mirror to determine the spatial coordinates, Luo Yan took Xiao with him and quickly teleported to the Shannon secret realm. Although the opponent was the ancestor of the demon clan, Luo Yan also had extremely rich experience in dealing with enemies at the ancestor level. For example, in the underground cave of Nanzhao in the Eastern Empire realm, Long followed the ancestor level LVN with a group of friends, using the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons to conceal his own existence, and used scanning to keep a distance, without revealing his tracks throughout the whole process. With the successful experience last time, Luo Yan was naturally not panicked at this time, just holding the Tianji Divine Shuttle and activating his true essence steadily. Shi held his arm with one hand to prevent them from being separated during the transmission process, and with the other hand she kept rolling copper coins and silently calculating something. Although she was calm and self-sustaining, she had never done such a dangerous thing as tracking an immortal, so although she looked calm and composed like Luo Yan, she was actually very nervous in her heart. The feeling of rushing into the spatial barrier was like being trapped in a thick mattress, and the pressure from all directions made people breathless. Suddenly, the surrounding pressure disappeared. Luo Yan looked again and found that they were in a strange cave. In the near distance, there were rolling bare hills without any vegetation. The soil underfoot had become dry and hardened, with spiderweb-like cracks that stretched densely into the distance. In the distance, there were mountain peaks as high as knife tips. There was also no green at all, and it seemed to be made of stones. Luo Yan licked his lips and found that there was no moisture in the air. It was very dry. Here, Shi quickly scanned the surroundings and confirmed that there was no trace of the old dragon. Then he hesitated and said, "This doesn't seem to be a cave." "Yeah." Luo Yan nodded and said, "The 5 elements are completely out of balance. A normal immortal cave should have complete yin and yang and all 5 elements, but here, gold is the only strong element among the 5 elements, because gold overcomes wood, so there is no wood." As if to verify his statement, Luo Yan took out a peachwood sword from the Tiangong treasure bag and pointed it at the ground. Suddenly a tree grew out of the ground, but it only grew to a few feet before it disintegrated as if struck by a sharp blade, turning into countless rustling wood chips that were scattered in that blade like wind. "I see." Shi felt that he had really learned a lot, but what does this mean? "Where should we go next?" "Madam, don't you know?" Luo Yan asked. "How should I know?" "Ask your copper coins." Shi was stunned for a long time before realizing that he had to do the divination himself. He coughed awkwardly and asked, "What are you going to do?" "To calculate where those people went." Luo Yan replied, "From the previous conversation, these people should have come prepared. We can just use this to ask them to lead the way for us." Shi sighed, thinking that if others encountered immortals from the enemy camp, they would want to escape thousands of miles away directly. Why do we have to deliberately get close to them? She threw out a copper coin to tell fortunes. After a moment, she pointed to the mountains in the distance that looked like clusters of blades and said, "They should have gone in that direction. Let's go." Luo Yan quickly rode the sword. "Wait a minute," Shi wanted to remind him that flying a sword was too ostentatious and easy to be discovered, but Luo Yan had already rushed out 100 feet away, so she could only hurry to catch up, secretly blaming her husband for his reckless behavior. But this was actually a wrong accusation against Luo Yan. After all, he had the great magical power of scanning, and the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons to blind his consciousness, so it was not certain who would discover who first. The two of them passed through a large area of wasteland, and saw that many monsters gradually appeared on the plain below. Luo Yan looked carefully and recognized that it should be a sword slave. The so-called sword slave is a broken sword that absorbs the essence of the sun and the moon and becomes a demon. It is a very special demon. From the appearance, it is a broken sword body suspended in the air, and there are many small metal fragments, rotating around the sword body like stars surrounding the moon. Although these sword slaves look weird and ferocious, they are not aggressive. They like to dig the soil to find ores, eat and digest metal to repair themselves, and then they are transformed into flying swords. Shushan Locking Demon Tao has a large number of sword slaves to provide a stable output of flying swords. But the sword slaves here seem different. Seeing the two people flying through the air, they quickly shot the fragments around them, as if trying to shoot them down. These fragments are not powerful, probably only 1/5 or even 1/7 of the power of ordinary Jin and Shinran's flying sword piercing, but the problem is that there are too many, which makes it difficult to guard against. Luo Yan, who is proficient in sword control, is naturally not afraid of this barrage attack. He just cleverly and agilely passes through without any injury. Shi was a little embarrassed. She didn't have much experience in fighting. Facing this chaotic siege, she relied on nothing more than the secret art of the Southern Dipper Galaxy and the Tuyaopogu Chen Star Sand. The Nandoxing secret technique consumes too much true essence, and is usually used to trap and kill enemies, but is not suitable for defense. Therefore, she manipulated a large amount of star sand to cover herself to ensure that she would not be injured by the fragments. As the star sand wrapped around her, the weight increased, and the speed of the Zheji Yuan sword immediately slowed down. Luo Yan saw that his wife could not bear it, so he had to turn around to save her. He saw that the sword slaves below were fighting more and more intensively, and he couldn't help but get angry. I was busy on the road and impatient to fight with you. You are still energetic, right? He rubbed his hands together, and a 5-color divine light surged out and pounced on the ground. The sword slaves buzzed in fear and fled in all directions, but how could they escape the speed of the divine light? In an instant, they were swallowed by the colorful silk, and under the disappearance of the 5 elements, they were annihilated in an instant. The divine light spread out, and a large number of sword slaves quickly turned into molten iron, which was spread flat on the hardened and cracked wasteland, and suddenly formed small lakes, like an oasis in the desert. Shiluli silently watched her husband display his magical powers, thinking that the power of the 5 elements divine light seemed to be much stronger than before. In the past, when her husband used the 5 elements divine light, wherever he swept it, it would be transformed, but it was not as bad as it is now, where the environment within 100 feet was completely changed. She calmly took out the copper coin and tossed it a few more times, and then calculated that Luo Yan's 5 elements divine light had actually advanced to the innate level. That was the innate grade 5 elements chaos divine light, which was known as nothing can be brushed and the nemesis of all magic weapons in the world. Luo Yan saw Shiluli's shocked expression, and knew that she had understood, and was secretly happy. Because I will definitely use this innate 5 elements chaos divine light frequently in the future, I still let my wife know first, but the way to know it must be carefully chosen. If you play Kyo Chain Tian, you can say to junior sisters you in a very calm way, this innate 5 elements chaos divine light is not difficult to practice, I have mastered it, and brush the synchronization value of the invincible character. Zhu Yingyan was inspired to win, and her mind was full of how to beat her senior brother, so she didn't notice the doubts. But Shiluli didn't have so many concerns. If she told her directly that the 5 elements divine light had advanced, she might ask, oh, where did the innate 5 elements true veins come from? If she fooled her, she might not be able to hide it, and she would want to calculate in various ways. It's better not to say it clearly, just hint at it like this, so that she would give up. As Luo Yan expected, Shiluli's mind was full of where did my husband find the innate 5 elements true veins? I actually found them all for him. She wanted to ask, but then she thought that her husband didn't tell her clearly. If she asked rashly, her husband would ask back, how do you know that my 5 elements divine light has been upgraded to the innate level? And she would expose the fact that she used copper coins to calculate him again. Which man likes to be monitored by his wife? Forget it, since he doesn't say it, I won't ask any more questions. I'll wait for him to tell me himself. Chapter 784. The dragon does not deserve the treasure. The two of them crossed the plain full of sword slaves, fighting their way through, and finally arrived at the foot of the Blade Mountain range. From a distance, the Blade Mountain range was steep and towering. Now that they were close, they felt even more terrifying. All the rocks were sharp and pointed outward irregularly. The entire mountain range was composed of thousands of such sharp stones, which reminded Luo Yan that Blade Mountain Wei Yinglong was tied up in the demon locking tower, which seemed to be built in imitation of this place. However, that Blade Mountain was really too small, far less than the endless Blade Mountain range in front of them, which stretched for thousands of miles. Just looking at it gave people a murderous aura. After chasing here, Luo Yan expanded the scanning range again and knew that the dragons were deep in the mountain. But how the other party got here first and entered the Blade Mountain range was unknown. Luo Yan told Shiluli, calculate where they are. Shiluli did as he was told and quickly came to the conclusion. They are in the belly of the mountain. The calculation was quite correct. Luo Yan pondered in his heart, wondering whether Jin's scanning was better or Shiluli's divination was better. Hey, if I let Luli calculate Jin, what would the result be? You can try. Come, the mirror said in a teasing tone. Hearing the fearless tone of this broken mirror, Luo Yan knew that Jin's scanning must be better. Then how do we get into the belly of the mountain? He asked again casually. That's up to you. Shiluli replied. How do I know? Luo Yan was surprised. Don't you have the 5 elements divine light? Shiluli asked in surprise. Use the 5 elements transformation to create a road in this Jinshi mountain range, isn't it enough? Luo Yan sighed, thinking that he thought his wife had some ingenious way to do it, but he didn't expect that I would have to do the hard work. He urged the innate 5 elements divine light to brush it up, and the hard mountain originally made of gold and stone quickly melted like snow in spring, turning into molten iron. The two continued to move forward along the transformed passage, and the deeper they entered the mountain, the more they felt a strange suction force, dragging them away. Earth Polar Magnetic Mother. Shirley made a quick judgment. There should be a Earth Polar Magnetic Mother in this mountain. The so-called Magnetic Mother is a kind of huge magnet, most of which can interfere with and attract gold-related objects. For example, the Panlong gold ball that Shiro gave to Long Long in the past was made of the Magnetic Mother. When someone else shot a flying sword at it, it could be absorbed by this treasure. For example, in the Bayushing competition, the Cunning Magnetic Mother that Luo Yan took out from the treasure bag could be used to absorb the Yuan Magnetic Divine Light. But the strange thing about this Earth Polar Magnetic Mother is that it not only attracts gold objects, but also attracts all other objects, and the closer it is to the Magnetic Mother, the greater its suction force. Therefore, whenever you encounter the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother, it is best to run as far away as possible at the first time, otherwise if the distance is too close, the suction force exceeds the range that you can break free, and you will die directly. When Luo Yan heard that it was the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother, he immediately got a headache. If Lily was not here, he would dare to rush in with the help of a Jing's transmission. But now Lily is here. If she is in danger and it is difficult to save her, it is better to ask her to calculate it first. Lily, can you calculate the range of the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother? Luo Yan asked tentatively. It's hard to say. Shirley made a divination and replied, the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother and the mountain are integrated into one, and its specific location cannot be calculated. However, its range can be roughly estimated based on the strength of the suction. Husband, are you planning to take advantage of the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother? How is that possible? Luo Yan laughed and shook his head and said, the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother is an innate spiritual object. The closer it is, the greater the suction. If it fits perfectly, its force may be unbearable even for immortals. How can I have the ability to take advantage of it? Then what husband means is, Shirley pondered for a moment and said, this cave was opened up by humans. The probability that the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother is naturally here is very small. It is more likely that it was moved here from somewhere else. In order to seal something. Luo Yan also smiled and said, what could be safer than hiding near the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother? Just be careful, those people may also be eyeing the treasures near the Earth Polar Magnetic Mother. Shirley paused here. If our speculation is correct. So the two continued to use the 5 elements divine light to clear the way, and walked forward carefully for about a quarter of an hour, and finally entered a tunnel dug by humans. This should be the normal way in. Shirley took out the copper plate and made a divination. Well, they did pass through here before. Then let's follow them and see. Luo Yan said. Be careful, they might set traps where they pass. Shirley reminded. Your husband is an expert in formation, scanning. Luo Yan smiled. If you are fooled by such a trick, it would be better to close the Tiangong workshop early. But the other party is an immortal. Shirley said. If it weren't for my expertise in formation, the immortal might not be as powerful as me. Luo Yan replied. The two of them were walking and chatting, when suddenly Shirley stopped and said, they stopped ahead. Oh. Although Luo Yan had already scanned and confirmed, he still pretended to have just learned about it, frowned and said, they must have found something. Do you know where they stopped? It should be somewhere spacious. Shirley replied. To be precise, it was in a hall. Luo Yan nodded to show that he knew, and scanned over carefully. He saw 3 people standing in a hall in the distance. In the center of the hall was a scroll, on which the streets, daily life, and a large number of people were outlined with brush strokes. What's more amazing is that the people on the canvas are all moving, wandering around the market, bargaining, soliciting and hawking, and in various forms. Excellent. The old man clapped his hands and exclaimed, what a great red dust 100 worlds! This picture is best at trapping the enemy. When the battle is about to begin, it will trap the person and immediately make him fall into the illusion. Even after 100 lives, he will find it difficult to wake up. After saying that, the old man took down the scroll, rolled it up quickly, and stuffed it into his storage bag. Luo Yan. I have to say, it always feels a bit strange to watch others take treasures like this. I feel that the treasure should have been taken by me. Is this treasure destined for me? I will only take one of the things in it. The old dragon put the scroll away and said calmly, you can distribute the rest among yourselves. So Shiro and Long Xiaoqi swept over from left to right, sweeping away everything they saw, making Luo Yan very jealous. No, it should be very angry. Shannon is the ancestor of our human race. His legacy should be handed over to the human race. How could it fall into the hands of you cheap dragons? No, we have to think of a way. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 785. The Red Dust World. Hey, don't be impulsive. Hearing him shouting in his heart, Kumlan Mira hurriedly said. At this stage, Luo Yan is absolutely impossible to beat the immortal level, even if he is on the Mirror Flower and Water Moon. The only possibility is to burn the true essence and pull out the Chin Sword Master again. But let's not talk about whether Shilili will be exposed next to him. The key is that burning the true essence consumes too much energy, which is enough for Kumlan Mirror to save and load tens of thousands of times. How can I have so much spiritual energy to show off to you? Humph, useless mirror. Luo Yan said with disdain. Well, forget it. For the sake of our partnership for so many years, I will follow your words and not take risks. Kumlan Mirror. So if I hadn't asked, you really plan to challenge the immortal, right? Don't fall into his trap. Su Mingjian suddenly said to her, he didn't intend to take a risk at all. Although he said that, he just wanted to see if there was a chance. Kumlan Mirror was stunned for a moment, and then reacted quickly. Stupid. How foolish. How could I take this man's words seriously? Alas, I shouldn't have changed my mind about him. Kumlan Mirror was reflecting on itself here, but Shilili was unaware of it. Her calculations were certainly not as good as Kumlan Mirror's scans, so she could only roughly calculate that the other party had stopped, but she didn't know why. Seeing Luo Yan stop, she stood obediently beside him without saying a word. It wasn't until the three dragons left the hall that Luo Yan sighed and continued to move forward with Shilili. Following the passage, they came to the hall where the other party was staying, and the two were finally stunned. Although they had seen it once in the scan, Luo Yan didn't know how shameless the other party was until he was really in the hall. Clean. The entire hall was swept clean, not to mention the boxes containing treasures. Even the nails for hanging scrolls were pulled out and taken away, so that when the two looked around, they saw that the hall was empty, as if there was nothing in the first place. Shilili also fell silent, thinking that if we continue at this pace, even if we can follow the other party safely and remain undetected, what's the point? There is no gain, just to exercise courage. Luo Yan still didn't give up, and turned the scan to the maximum, scanning every brick seam and every floor seam in the hall. Bastard, you really don't plan to leave anything behind, huh? There is indeed nothing left, and the Dragon Ancestor's spiritual sense can't miss anything. However, on a certain wall, there is a slight spatial fluctuation. Under normal circumstances, space is stable and continuous, and there should be no fluctuations. If it happens, it means that there must be some traces left after manipulating the space. It may be a spell, a magic weapon, or a ray. Luo Yan suddenly said, there are traces of residual array here. Was it arranged by those people before? Shilili asked. No. Luo Yan saw clearly from the previous scan that the other party did not arrange anything in this hall. In other words, it should be a trace left from earlier. Luli, help me calculate. Luo Yan ordered. Shilili threw out a copper coin, told the hexagram, and then fell into silence. What's wrong? Luo Yan asked. The incomplete result. Shilili answered hesitantly, this formation was set up too long ago, and then after a long time, it encountered a problem again, which led to the final incomplete form. If not, there would be no traps left in this hall. Luo Yan nodded in agreement and said, wouldn't that be like opening the door to thieves? There must be something wrong with the formation. Because the time interval is too long, I can't calculate the detailed results. Shilili continued, I only know that the problem is not from the outside, but from the inside. Inside? Luo Yan began to think. If it came from the outside, it can be understood that someone invaded this secret realm and cracked the formation. But inside, is there something with intelligence in the hall that tried to break through this formation? Luo Yan pondered silently, his fingers following the remaining traces of the formation, and drew the corresponding lines in the air. If an ordinary array master wants to restore the array based on the incomplete map, it will take several months to complete. However, Luo Yan has a talent of understanding everything he hears, and he has also dealt with arrays that are thousands of times more complicated than this one, such as the multi-dimensional compression array in the former IQ secret realm. At this time, with just a few outlines, he immediately knew the array situation by heart. It was indeed broken from the inside, but it can only be said that it was broken through halfway. The guy who tried to destroy the array is hiding in a space crack nearby, which explains why there is space fluctuation. Luo Yan smiled slightly, then took out the Tianu divine shuttle and threw it towards the location of the fluctuation. The divine shuttle disappeared through the ripples, and then reappeared. There was only a click, and something was knocked out of the void by the divine shuttle and fell to the ground. It was a spread-out scroll. Looking at its framed exterior, it is exactly the same as the Red Dust 100 Worlds picture that was taken away by Lao long before, but the content of the scroll is different. The painting of the Red Dust and the 100 Worlds that Lao Long took away depicted an extremely crowded market, with countless people running, trading, and hawking in the market, making the city look prosperous and lively. But the market on the ground was still the same market, except that there were no living people, and the streets were full of corpses. The surrounding buildings were either in ruins or burning, as if they had suffered a serious war disaster. Luo Yan was about to go over to pick it up, when he suddenly heard Shiluli shout "Be careful," and the painting bounced up from the ground and pounced on Luo Yan and Shiluli. As the world spun, the two were already in the center of the market. This was a brick road paved with blue stone, which was now covered with large areas of blood. The buildings on both sides were either closed or broken into by violence from the outside, looted and set on fire, and fell into the blazing fire. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind blew, passing over the corpses lying in all directions, and a large number of ghost soldiers emerged from the cold wind, holding weapons and spears, and pounced on the two viciously. Before Luo Yan could make a move, Shiluli had already pinched the dough formula and activated the secret art of the Southern Dipper Galaxy. The surging river water rushed out from the void, instantly washing away the entire street. The ghost soldiers were washed away, the corpses were also swept away, and the burning buildings fell to the bottom of the river, turning into desolate ruins. Suddenly, a huge cold dragon rushed out of the river, raised its upper body straight, and stared at Luo Yan and Shiluli with its ferocious dragon eyes. The dragon opened its mouth and a large piece of white gas was spit out forward, and everything it passed turned into ice, just like a cold hell. Chapter 786 to a channel. From the moment they landed here, Luo Yan and Shiluli knew very well that this must be an illusion in the Red Dust 100 Worlds diagram. But knowing is one thing, but how to deal with the illusion here is another. Is there no way to break it? Luo Yan asked in his heart. Not only is there an illusion here, but it is also combined with space magic. Kunlun Mirror replied, it's quite complicated. Aren't these two your strengths? Luo Yan asked with a sneer. I can use violence to break the illusion here. Kunlun Mirror replied with a sneer, but in this way, it will definitely cause damage to the spirit of the weapon, and even affect the magic weapon itself. Ahem. Luo Yan immediately changed the subject and said seriously, I'm just asking. Since the spirit of this magic weapon has set up a battle to test me, how can I take advantage of it? I will definitely make it lose sincerely. Kunlun Mirror was amazed at his agility and was speechless. At this time, the surrounding area was full of Shiluli's teen-hair water, and the dragon sprayed frost in all directions, freezing everything it passed into ice. But Luo Yan remained calm and composed. He just put his hands together, and a large amount of five-colored light overflowed from the gaps between his palms. As the five-colored light approached, the white cold air receded like a tide, and soon the five-colored light enveloped the cold dragon, quickly turning it into ashes and disappearing. Only the calm water surface remained. The two men stood in the air with swords. Luo Yan put his hands behind his back and acted like a master. He said calmly, "What other tricks do you have? Just use them." Silence. After a long silence, a childish voice finally rang out between heaven and earth. "What you just used was the innate five elements great chaos divine light." Before Luo Yan could answer, the voice hesitated and said, "So you were from the Peacock clan?" "Grandpa told me not to listen to the demon clan. I am human." Luo Yan was furious. "You can't even tell whether you're a human or a demon, and you are still talking nonsense to me here." After a while, the voice was heard saying, "If you were a human, why do you have the innate five elements great chaos divine light?" "I learned it." Luo Yan replied. "How could the human race learn? How could the human race not learn?" Luo Yan said impatiently, "By the way, you were the spirit of the scroll just now, right? What is this place?" "I am the spirit of the Red Dust 100 Worlds map." The voice replied, "You are now in the space of my in-scroll." In-scroll. Luo Yan thought of the scroll that Lao Long had just taken away, so there are 2 scrolls of the Red Dust 100 Worlds map. When Grandpa created me, he specially created 2 scrolls, Yin and Yang. Usually I live in the in-scroll. The voice said. "Who is your grandpa?" Shilui suddenly asked. "Grandpa is Grandpa." The voice began to be confused again. "What is your name and what is your Taoist name?" Luo Yan asked very quickly. The other party seemed to be stumped by the question, and after a long time he answered, "I don't know." "I don't know." Luo Yan frowned. "Husband, let me ask." Shilui reminded him. Although this spirit has intelligence, it is obviously not experienced in the world, and its IQ is about that of a 5 or 6-year-old child. Thinking of this, Shilui slowed down his tone and said gently, "We're really not the demon clan, but the human clan." "How can I believe you?" The voice asked. "If you are the demon clan, I will trap you here forever. It's very simple." Shilui replied, "If I were a demon clan, and I already knew that you didn't like the demon clan, I would definitely kill them right away. Why would I stay here and talk to you?" Luo Yan felt that this reason was full of loopholes, but the voice thought for a moment and said, "That's right. Knowing that I will target the demon clan, you are still so calm, then you are definitely not the demon clan." After that, the surroundings suddenly changed, and the 2 returned to the original hall. In front of Luo Yan, a scroll was suspended in the air, and it rolled itself up, saying, "My Yang scroll was taken away by those bad guys. I'm going to get it back. Why don't I go with you?" Shilui immediately realized that the bad guys it was talking about were the previous group of people, so she said earnestly, "Those bad guys are too powerful. You alone, and a painting, I'm afraid you are no match for them." "No need." The scroll said innocently, "The in-scroll and the Yang scroll are connected to each other. I just need to break the space and use this mysterious connection to get the Yang scroll back. No matter where they run with the Yang scroll, it will be useless. Put it in the storage bag, and you can get it back." Luo Yan was surprised at first, and then when he heard the cunning characteristic activated, he quickly had a flash of inspiration and immediately said, "But, if those bad guys find that the Yang scroll is missing, they will definitely come back to look for it, right? Then where can you go with the Yin and Yang scrolls? Won't you be caught by them again?" The scroll seemed to be stumped by his question, and after a while he said, "I can hide in the gap in space. You hid in the gap in space just now, but I found you too." Luo Yan laughed. "How do you know that those bad guys didn't find your tricks?" The scroll was silent, and began to roll slowly in the air, muttering, "What should I do? I'm not good at thinking, because I don't have a brain. Why don't you come with us?" Shilui made a timely suggestion, "Wait until we take you to a safe place, and then you can take the Yang scroll back. Even if those bad guys react, they won't be able to find you, right?" "Well." The scroll didn't think much about it, but just said, "I can follow you, but what?" Shilui asked with a smile. "But I want to know your surnames and Taoist names." The scroll said. "Oh, this weapon spirit is actually quite easy to learn." When Luo Yan heard that this was the question he had just asked, he immediately changed his opinion of it. There are many magic weapons that can give birth to weapon spirits, but there are very few magic weapons that have basic intelligence and can communicate. Among them, there are very few magic weapons that can learn from their masters and achieve self-growth, and all of them have very terrifying foundations, such as Jing and Suming. "My name is Shilui, and my Taoist name is Dongyu." Shilui said with a smile, "His name is Luo Yan, and his Taoist name is Jinoon." The scroll was silent for a long time, and then said, "I'm asking you, what are your surnames and names, not what are your names?" So this spirit doesn't even know what a name is? Luo Yan was simply stunned, but Shilui was very patient, so he took the scroll in his hand and continued to explain to it. The so-called name is a surname and a given name. The 2 continued to walk on the road that the dragon cultivators had walked in front of them. Shilui spent a while to almost ease the spirit's fear of strangers, and then got a lot of words from it. The reason why the creator of this Red Dust 100 Worlds map wanted to refine the Yin and Yang maps was actually to let it serve as a connecting channel between this cave and the outside world. The Yang map and the Yin map have a mysterious connection in space. Anyone standing near the Yang diagram can use this link to teleport to the location of the Yin diagram, and vice versa. The one who can really control this teleportation is the spirit of the Red Dust 100 Worlds diagram. However, according to it, since it was created, it has not really played the role of teleportation. Luo Yan was bored listening to it, thinking, isn't this just a degraded version of A? Jin's teleportation. A Jin's teleportation can not only cross space, but also cross time, and it is also very flexible in coordinate positioning. You must hold the yin and yang diagrams in two locations at the same time to achieve point-to-point teleportation, which can only be said to be far inferior to my Jing. Hey, wait, hey, Xiao Hong. Luo Yang suddenly called it. Can you locate where the Yang scroll is now? Yes. The red dust 100 worlds diagram replied. Even if it is in the storage bag? Luo Yang asked subconsciously at first, then realized that it probably didn't know what a storage bag was, and said, well, since it is a two-way teleportation, then you can also teleport things near the Yang scroll. Yes. The red dust 100 worlds diagram gave an affirmative answer. Husband. Shili finally reacted at this time and asked in surprise, you are not going to steal, Luo? Luo Yang said calmly, don't you think that there must be a lot of magical weapons with amazing lethality in the storage bag of the demon immortal? If it continues to stay in the hands of the other party and play a role, how many righteous monks will be killed or injured in the future? Can you calculate it? In this case, if we eliminate this hidden danger in advance, wouldn't it be a great merit for the righteous sect? How many lives can be saved indirectly? Think about the previous 100,000 gods and demons besieging Penglai, and then think about the losses suffered by King Temple. Can we still stand idly by and remain indifferent? Chapter 787 Mysterious Talisman. Shili was silent. Her husband was a real talent, as he could talk about taking something from a bag with such righteousness. Of course, she was not a moral guardian. She thought that since the hexagram showed danger, the opponent was most likely the 6 parts of the demon cult. If there was a way to weaken the opponent and strengthen herself, it would be despicable, so she would use it. But, using such a despicable method was one thing. It was another thing to find a legitimate reason when you clearly wanted to use it. Shili was still daydreaming, but Luo Yan already thought this plan was feasible, and he quickly discussed it with Hong Chenpas hit you. We can take it, but we can't take it so early. What if the other party finds out? Why not wait until the other party is ahead of us, sweep up all the treasures, put them in the storage bag, and then you can take them all out. By the way, how many objects can you transfer in one breath now? I don't know about this. Hong Chenpas Hichu said hesitantly, I haven't tried it. You can give it a try. Luo Yan said immediately, first move all the things in his storage bag over, then we count the number and wait, and then move them back to prevent him from finding out. Cough cough cough. Shili suddenly coughed. What's wrong, Luo? Luo Yan asked immediately with concern. I think this is not good. Shili said. Luo, you shouldn't be the kind of gentleman who defends morality, right? Luo Yan said in shock. Oh, that's not what I meant. Shili explained, weakening the magic path is fine. But I think we should not use the name of weakening the magic path to enrich ourselves with bad means. After all, a gentleman has his own way and his own way. If we do some things, the bottom line will be broken, and we may become what we don't want to be in the future. Luo Yan opened his mouth in surprise, and only heard the Kunlun mirror in the sea of consciousness say disdainfully. Lily is right, but some people don't have such a thing as a bottom line at all. Lily is talking about chickens and ducks. Broken mirror, shut up. Luo Yan scolded her first, and then said to Shili righteously, Lily, you're right. How about this, we don't take the things we get for ourselves, but hand them over to the sect? That's good. Shili said with a smile. Seeing her husband follow her advice, she was a little relieved for a while, but also a little embarrassed about her own meddling. Since it has been handed over to the sect, Luo Yan continued, if there are any interesting things in it, it would be okay for me to apply for it, right? Shili almost interrupted. Hand it over to the sect and then apply for it? How dare you say that, husband? However, when she thought about it carefully, she felt that it was a bit strange. If you say no, you are not allowed to ask the sect for it, it would sound a bit unreasonable. I handed over the treasures to the sect, but I can't apply for it myself. That's obviously unreasonable. But if I can use it, then Luo Yan will hand over everything, and then borrow it all back from the sect as the master of Tiangong Fang, Master Jim Noon. How could Penglai King Temple not agree? You can borrow it as long as you want. Now that everything has been taken back, what difference does it make whether it is handed over or not? It only belongs to you King Temple in name. Thinking of this, Shili looked at the red dust 100 worlds chart again, and heard the spirit of the instrument say in a half-understanding voice. So that's it. As long as it's like this, there's no need to worry about breaking the bottom line, right? Shili closed her eyes. It's over, This spirit of the instrument will be led astray by her husband. No. She suddenly rolled up the red dust 100 worlds chart and said, "We can talk about this after we get to a safe place. The most urgent thing is to continue to follow the other party and confirm the whereabouts of the Shen Ding." That's right. This reminded Luo Yan. Compared with the treasures in the bag of some immortals, the Shen Ding is obviously more valuable. Shen Ding? The red dust 100 worlds chart asked, "What is that?" Shilli described the appearance of the ding. "Oh, that's not a ding, it's a big pot." The red dust 100 worlds chart corrected her. "Grandpa often uses it to cook food." Luo Yan. Shilli. Think about it carefully, the ding was indeed used as a cooking utensil before it became a formation device. But using the Shen Ding to cook something, why does it sound so weird? Is the pot you're talking about engraved with dense text inside? Luo Yan suddenly asked. Not just inside. Hong Chen Hichu replied, outside as well. Is the inside and outside of the Shen Ding engraved with text? Shilli asked immediately. I think so. Luo Yan said ambiguously. Here we go again. Shilli was a little unhappy. When she'd first entered the sect, she thought this junior brother was a pure and honest type. Now that they have walked hand in hand until today, she has long noticed that under Luo Yan's seemingly honest squinting eyes, there is a cunning heart. Of course, as the owner of Tiangong Fang, it is better to be cunning than to be pure, but Shilli is really angry that he always treats her as a fool. She was silent for a moment and asked, "Husband, are you sure about this?" She did not ask directly, "How did you know this?" but asked, "Are you sure?" This is the embodiment of Shilli's sense of proportion. The former has a feeling of questioning, which will inevitably make her husband alert. But Luo Yan was not fooled by the latter, just laughed and said, "That's not the case. Anyway, let's see what happens." Shilli. I really want to bite him to death. The two continued to walk along the passage. The deeper they went, the greater the suction force they received, and even faintly affected their balance. Obviously, this distance has already posed a threat to the two, but in Luo Yan's scanning and Shilli's divination, the other party is still moving forward, probably because the dragon cultivators are physically strong, so they dare to take greater risks. After walking for a while, Shilli suddenly stopped. They stopped. Is that so? Luo Yan pretended not to know, but in fact, he had already scanned and confirmed that the dragon cultivators had broken through the space somewhere ahead and entered the next space. Shilli made another divination and confirmed, they are no longer here. I think they went to another cave. Let's go and take a look first. Luo Yan said. After walking for more than a quarter of an hour, they finally arrived at the place where the dragon monk disappeared. It was still a long corridor straight down here, and the gravity on the two people was very obvious, almost dragging them to fly forward. Luo Yan grabbed the rock wall next to him with one hand and held Shilli's arm with the other hand. Fortunately, the rock wall was also rough and uneven, with sharp protrusions of gold and iron ore everywhere, allowing Luo Yan to easily fix himself. They disappeared here. Shilli said, "Husband, see where it is more appropriate to use your magic shuttle." Luo Yan turned on the scan and scanned over. Before he found the fluctuation of space ripples, he suddenly scanned deep underground. Probably near the location of the Earth's magnetic mother, there was a mysterious object with golden light. It seemed to be a talisman. Chapter 788 7 Treasures Giant Clam. What kind of talisman? The divine light is restrained, but the precious light is radiant. It is obvious that the grade is extraordinary. Could it be the red talisman of chaos needed to unlock the second layer of the Tianyu divine shuttle? Luo Yan guessed this in his heart, but since he could not get close to the Earth Polar magnetic mother, it was difficult to confirm. "A Jing," he said in his mind, "send that thing to me." "It can't be sent." Kunlun Mirror replied, "The space around the Earth Polar magnetic mother is distorted. If it is sent, it will most likely damage the object. You are really unreliable, Jing." Luo Yan said disappointedly, "If the Ang scroll of the red dust 100 worlds map was next to the Earth Polar magnetic mother, I might have gotten it directly. The red dust 100 worlds map is point-to-point transmission, not coordinate transmission." Kunlun Mirror didn't fall for his provocation at all, and said faintly, "If the Ang scroll was next to the Earth Polar magnetic mother, it would have been sucked over and shattered long ago." Huh. Luo Yan suddenly said strangely, "Then why didn't the talisman be sucked over?" "Because it is exerting its magical power to resist the suction of the Earth Polar magnetic mother." Kunlun Mirror replied. "This talisman can actually resist the Earth Polar magnetic mother, it is definitely not an ordinary item." Luo Yan immediately concluded, a jinn, is there any other way to get it? No. Kunlun Mirror answered directly. What if I smash it with the Qin's human sword? Luo Yan asked again. Then you'll reveal to Shilili that you are the Qin sword master. Human sword said quickly. Luo Yan finally gave up and sighed, let's talk about it next time, let's talk about it next time. He took out the Tianu divine shuttle, and with the help of a Jin's positioning coordinates, he quickly broke through the space, and then went to the next space with Shilili. It turned out that this place was in the deep sea. The huge deep water pressure came from all directions, which caught the two people who had just entered the cave heaven off guard. But as Penglai monks, the two had already experienced this kind of water environment. Luo Yan immediately released the 5 elements divine light to dissipate all the surrounding deep water pressure. Where are they? About 13 miles ahead. Shilili was silent for a moment, and suddenly said, they are not human, but dragons. They have now revealed their true forms and are swimming forward on the seabed. What, they are actually demons? Luo Yan quickly showed an expression of surprise, disbelief, extreme fear, and lingering fear, and then frowned and said worriedly, if they are demons, we can't let them take away the treasures of the human race. Well, indeed. Shilili was also a little tired, so he had to say, I will use divination to confirm the other party's situation. If there is a chance, you can use the Red Dust 100 Worlds map to take the things away. Sure enough, once it was known that the other party was a demon, what Lily originally thought was a means of breaking the bottom line immediately turned into a racial war, a life and death battle, and they had to fight for it. Luo Yan asked Hong Chenbis hit you. What are the things around the Yang scroll? Did you see them clearly? Not much. Hong Chenbis hit you replied, in addition to my Yang scroll, there is also a small bottle, a scripture, and a Taoist robe. That's all. Luo Yan was disappointed. It's impossible for the other party to carry all their belongings in a storage bag. Shilili said. It seems that we can only wait until the other party has plundered everything before we take action. Luo Yan nodded. The two continued to move forward in the water. In this deep water, the speed of sword control is far inferior to the speed of dragon swimming, and the swimming of the flesh is not as good as water escape, but Luo Yan urged the 5 elements divine light to completely break the water environment, resulting in the two being not affected by the deceleration at all, and the speed actually surpassed the opponent, and the distance was constantly shortened. So Shilili had to remind her husband to slow down the movement speed, so as not to get too close and risk being noticed by the opponent. It was not the first time for the two of them to move in the deep sea environment. The biggest trouble here was that there were no terrain references, so it was difficult to tell the direction, and they might start to go in circles while walking. Shilili would use arithmetic to explore every once in a while, on the one hand to confirm the situation of the dragon clan in the distance, and on the other hand to confirm that they had not taken the wrong path. Luo Yan was much more relaxed. It seemed that he was completely relying on his wife Shilili to find the way and track, but in fact he was scanning and monitoring himself, double insurance, very stable. Husband, be careful. Shilili suddenly reminded. Luo Yan hurriedly used his spiritual sense to explore nearby, only to find that a huge abyss suddenly appeared near the seabed in front. The abyss was bottomless, as if a beast had opened its mouth wide. Although it was difficult to find, it could be confirmed by scanning that there was actually a huge undercurrent vortex above the abyss, which was constantly drawing huge amounts of seawater from the surrounding area, and then compressing it and injecting it into the abyss. If a cultivator without arithmetic and scanning continued to move forward, he would inevitably suffer a great loss, and might be rolled under and unable to get out. Luo Yan was about to say something when he suddenly scanned a dragon cultivator in the distance, who stopped in a coral forest. It's actually a giant clam bead. The old dragon laughed and said, do you know the origin of this giant clam bead? The giant clam bead seems to be one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. Shio said uncertainly. Not bad. The old dragon nodded approvingly. Compared to the 7 treasure-colored glaze, the 7 treasure giant clam is relatively common and easy to find, and its magic weapon function is relatively simple, which is to be used to immobilize. If you encounter an enemy, you'll throw the giant clam bead. When the opponent is illuminated by the brilliance of the bead, it will be like being trapped in the giant clam, unable to move, and can only be slaughtered. Of course, the higher the opponent's bloodline rank, the harder it is to be immobilized. In addition to your cultivation, the grade of the giant clam bead must also be considered. Judging from its color, the whiter the better, and the yellower the worse. As for the giant clam bead of such a good grade, even if it is at the ancestor level, it will suffer a great loss without precautions. As he said, the old dragon kicked open the largest giant clam shell in the coral forest, took out the pure white giant clam bead from it, put it into the storage bag, and said with satisfaction, "The remaining giant clam beads, you can take them by yourselves." So Shiro and Longshiaki started to smash all the giant clam shells around and take out their pearls. Although there were many of them, they all had at least a hint of yellow in color, and their grade was not as good as the pearl in the largest giant clam that Lao Long had taken away. They were not done with taking the giant clam pearls, and the two of them showed their dragon claws and pulled up all the corals by the roots and took them away, as if to prevent leakage. Lao Long saw it, but did not stop them. In his opinion, although these corals were not very useful, there were all kinds of things in the world. No matter how experienced a cultivator is, he cannot guarantee that he will not make a mistake. Taking away everything that can be taken is a good habit after all. Luo Yan, who was far away, was furious, thinking that Shennong's secret realm was the holy land of our human race, and it was actually ruined by these despicable dragons, which was really infuriating. Chapter 789. See the divine talisman again. Luo Yan thought that if this cave was really built by Shennong, it would be full of high-level magic weapons, but at least it should not be too shabby. But now it seems that this place is really just a half-finished product. Not to mention that there is no entrance. Just looking at this deep-sea cave, Luo Yan's evaluation is big but empty. Although it is spectacular, it is empty and there are very few valuable things. Of course, there are so few things, and they were plundered by the dragon monks, not even a drop of oil residue is left, which makes people even more angry. The things that the old dragon got can be taken back with the help of the Red Dust 100 Worlds map. As for those that were looted by Shiro and Longshiaki, it is estimated that they can't be recovered. Fortunately, the most powerful and highest level magic weapons were basically swallowed by the old dragon, so in the end, no matter how much loss, it would not be too big. Luo Yan and Shilili tried to bypass the abyss carefully, and found that the undercurrent vortex in front was really huge. If they took too long to bypass it, they would definitely be left behind by the dragon monks in front. According to the opponent's moving speed, it can be inferred that those dragon cultivators must have directly passed through the whirlpool. Shilili shot the purple extreme Hunyuan sword forward, but found that after only a few feet, he was immediately swept away by the undercurrent and it was difficult to force himself to move forward. What should we do? Luo Yan sighed and said, the dragon race has extremely high physical strength, so they can force their way through the whirlpool with the powerful undercurrent that is difficult to resist, but we don't have this ability. Why is there no way? Shilili asked in surprise, husband, what nonsense are you talking about? Why am I talking nonsense? Luo Yan was shocked. Don't hide it. Shilili was a little impatient, hurry up and show your tricks. Could it be that my identity as Long has been discovered by Lady Luoli? Luo Yan was almost shocked, and forced himself to calm down. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Long has never been to the world of cultivation, let alone the floors, he doesn't even recognize him. How could Lily know the connection between the two identities? Wait, is it a magic calculation? Seeing that he was silent for a long time, Shilili sighed and said faintly, husband, can't you just use your 5 elements divine light to open the way? Luo Yan's heart immediately fell to the ground, and he breathed a sigh of relief, but he continued to act. For such a large vortex, if you force the 5 elements divine light to open the way, I'm afraid that the consumption of true essence will be too great. I believe my husband can do it. Shilili said lightly. Luo Yan showed a helpless look, and urged the 5 elements divine light to shoot forward. The water flow that was originally running at an ultra-high speed was immediately quickly dissolved when it encountered the 5 elements divine light, revealing a waterless vacuum channel. The two continued to fly forward in this channel, and Luo Yan continued to watch the divine light, thinking that it was fortunate that he had upgraded the 5 elements divine light to the enable level, otherwise it would not be so easy to open the way in the face of such a huge undercurrent vortex. But although the wife didn't ask, she might not be without suspicion in her heart. You know, the innate 5 elements of the true veins are not common things. In order to collect the 5 true veins, Luo Yan spanned 3 accounts and 2 worlds, the human world and the Eastern Empire realm, and finally managed to collect them all with all kinds of efforts and good luck. If Lily asked about the origins of the 5 true veins in detail, I really couldn't tell them directly, so I could only make up stories. But making up stories is making up stories. What if Lily uses arithmetic to test the authenticity and finds out that I'm lying? So from the beginning, I shouldn't let her do arithmetic. thinking of the secret realm of Kuakong Mountain in the past. It was where I painstakingly looked up information and took Mishi to experience it. Luo Yan wanted to travel back in time and give himself a big slap in the face. The two finally passed through the whirlpool torrent area above the abyss, and saw that Shilili looked calm and didn't seem to have the intention of asking too much. Luo Yan had something to hide, so he naturally wouldn't make himself bored, so he took Shilili to continue on his way, and soon arrived at the coral forest where the dragon monks had stayed before. All I could see were broken roots of corals that had been removed, and smashed and scattered giant clam shells. What a pity. Shilili sighed as he looked at the mess. If it hadn't been destroyed by the dragon clan, it would have been a beautiful scenery, right? It's a pity. Luo Yan also echoed his sigh. I don't know how many treasures have fallen into the hands of the demon clan. I'm ashamed for the human race. Although the two of them shouted that it was a pity, the objects of pity were completely different. Luo Yan used the same trick again and scanned the spot again. Unfortunately, this time he didn't scan the red dust 100 worlds map that the dragon clan monks missed like the last cave heaven. After repeatedly confirming several times unwillingly, Luo Yan finally had to admit that there were not always leagues to be picked up. Leaving the coral forest, the two continued to move forward and finally arrived at a flat land on the seabed. They disappeared here before. Shilili said. Well, there is indeed a spatial fluctuation here. I think it is the weak point of the barrier leading to the next cave. Luo Yan said so. Just as he was about to throw the Tianu divine shuttle, he suddenly heard Shilili say, "Wait a minute. What's wrong?" "Lift your foot," Shilili said. Luo Yan raised his right foot and stood on one leg. Shilili gathered her skirt and squatted down. She tore off a piece of yellow paper stuck on the bottom of Luo Yan's boots. Although the yellow paper had been soaked in the seabed for an unknown period of time, it had not rotted and ulcerated. It was obviously not an ordinary thing. There were a lot of patterns written on it in red. Although the spiritual power was exhausted and it was dim, Luo Yan, with the characteristic of hearing 1,000 things, immediately recognized that this thing had been seen before. Wanlei Water Vein Divine Travel Talisman. This yellow paper was a Wanlei Water Vein Divine Travel Talisman with completely exhausted spiritual power. Because it had been abandoned here for an unknown number of years, it was no different from ordinary yellow paper. But if there was a way to replenish spiritual power, perhaps it could be restored to its original state. Luo Yan suddenly realized something. The function of the Wanlei Water Vein Magical Travel Talisman is to activate it from a water source and then randomly jump to another completely unconnected water source. This kind of jump is a jump in space, relying on the mysterious connection between water veins. No matter whether there is rock, void, or any formation restriction between the two water sources, these obstacles can be ignored. However, in this water system cave, there is endless flowing water in all directions, and the whole is a huge water source. The Wanlei Water Vein Magical Travel Talisman can jump between different water sources, but it cannot accelerate movement within the same water source. So why did this talisman paper appear here? Who threw it here? Unless, outside this deep sea, there is another isolated water source. Thinking of this, Luo Yan looked at his feet. There was water all around, in front, behind, left, right, and above. The only place where other water sources could be hidden was the deep rock layer under his feet. Chapter 790. The 10,000 miles water vein divine traveling formation. Luo Yan then told Shilili about his reasoning. The function of the Wanlei Water Vein Magical Travel Talisman is to jump from one water vein to another isolated, unconnected water vein. The spiritual power of this talisman has been exhausted, which means that it must have been used for the last time before it was discarded. In other words, in addition to the deep sea here, there must be another water vein that is not connected to this place. Is that so? Shilili nodded and said, "It sounds like there is no problem. If the Wanlei Water Vein Magical Travel Talisman you mentioned is indeed as effective as you said, are you sure?" Asking "are you sure?" is actually a disguised way of asking "where did you know this?" Luo Yan nodded and said, "Well, I had the honor of coming into contact with this strange object when I was training outside before." Is that so? Shilili's mind turned slightly. Although she used to like to play with her junior brother, the two are not completely inseparable, so she couldn't be sure whether what Luo Yan said was true. However, if it is true as he said, then this Wanlei Water Vein Magical Travel Talisman is a strange object, which is worth repairing and collecting. That's it. This magic talisman can't be used now, right? Shilili put away the yellow paper and said, "If it is repaired in the future, you can come and have a look." Really? Luo Yan thought to himself that he didn't know and he would have to wait until the next time, so he asked Kunlun Mirror in his heart, is there any way to detect the location of the water vein? I suspect it is under the sea. This cave is too wide. Think about how far you have flown all the way. It is definitely impossible to scan and see through it all. Kunlun Mirror replied, it is not suitable from the efficiency point of view. The only correct way is to use the one-way water vein magic talisman and use the connection between water veins to locate and jump. You can't locate it. Luo Yan asked again to confirm. Without coordinates, how can I locate it? Kunlun Mirror asked back. Luo Yan was silent for a moment, and suddenly heard Suming Jian say, if you want to repair this magic talisman, there is a way. What way? Luo Yan asked hurriedly. Beg me. Suming Jian said jokingly, beg me, and I'll tell you. Luo Yan was silent for a moment, then said, let's go to the next cave as soon as possible. Ah? Suming Jian asked in surprise, don't you want to explore another water vein? No need. Luo Yan said indifferently, the real key is the Shenanbing, the others are just details, no need to care about them. Don't. Occasionally explore other places, maybe you can gain something. Suming Jian saw him take out the Tianu divine shuttle and seemed to be really going to leave, so he hurriedly persuaded him. What if there is something good in that water vein? Luo Yan was unmoved, and Suming Jian continued to persuade him. Don't change your mind, just go and take a look. It doesn't matter if you take a look. I beg you. Luo Yan was about to activate the Tianu divine shuttle, but he paused for a moment after hearing what he said, and sighed and said, Suming, how long have you been following me? About 100 years. Suming Jian said uncertainly. Luo Yan nodded slowly and said, although you haven't done your best in the past 100 years, you have made great contributions. Since you want to go and see it so much, I will give you this face. Come, repair the one-way water vein divine travel talisman. Yes. At this time, Suming Jian finally felt something was wrong. He thought, isn't this a strategy of playing hard to get? I actually fell for such a strategy. Humph, you are worthy of being Cheng Yuan's Yue. It seems that there are still many things in the human race that I can learn from. Suming Jian quickly attributed the fact that he had foolishly fallen into the trap to the fact that the human race was too cunning, and then he suppressed his resentment and said calmly, this magic talisman looks like a disposable prop, but in fact it is because the spiritual power channel on it is too fragile. When you re-inject energy, it is easy to break the original channel, causing the talisman to lose its original effect. In other words, it is more convenient to make a new one than to repair it carefully. I have never learned how to make talismans. Luo Yan pondered and said, if I start rashly, the success rate will not be high. This is simple. Suming Jian continued, although you can't draw talismans, you know formations. Let your Kunlun mirror scan the passage on it first, and then magnify it in your sea of consciousness. Then you can use the means of setting up an array, treat these patterns as a formation, and draw them directly on the seabed plane. Then you can use it as the one-way water vein magic talisman and activate it, but in this case, it should actually be called the one-way water vein magic formation, which is more appropriate. Luo Yan was stunned. He thought, referring to the rune channel of the talisman, enlarging it to make a formation, this thing can also work. This idea, how sure are you? He couldn't help asking. About 60%. Suming Jian replied. What if it fails? Luo Yan continued to ask. Then you've wasted your time. Suming Jian said. Well, in that case, it's worth a try. Thinking of this, Luo Yan called Shilili and told her the idea in detail. My husband's idea is really wild and unconstrained. Shilili sighed. In fact, when my father was here, Tian Fatara often sent disciples to learn from my father about the basic formations. Although the talisman is easy to carry, the carrier area is too small after all. The more complex the rune structure, the more difficult it is to draw, and the formation can be made very large, so there is no problem of integration difficulty, so if the talisman maker wants to get started, it will be easier to start with the formation. My husband's wonderful idea just fits this point. If it can be drawn exactly, it should be feasible. In this case, why not give it a try? Since Shilili also thought it was okay, Luo Yan began to set up the formation. As a formation master, the full set of tools for setting up the formation are naturally carried in the Tiangong by Bahu bag. Luo Yan first carved patterns on the ground with a sword, then sealed the hubs with formation flags, and finally used the formation tripod as the starting key and placed it in the formation. so an enlarged version of the 10,000 miles water vein god traveling talisman soon appeared on the submarine plane. Shirley hesitated. It's a bit weird. Indeed. Luoyang sighed. In order to save space and look beautiful, formations are often symmetrical around the center, such as circles, squares or polygons, but the formation on the ground at this time is a long strip, which looks quite out of place. No matter what, as long as it can be activated. Luoyang asked Shirley to stand in the formation, put his hands on the ears of the tripod, and then he also held the ears at the other side of the tripod, injected his true energy, and activated the formation directly. It was not as expected that the sky and the earth were spinning, but the feed was shaking violently. Luoyang was about to speak in surprise, but suddenly heard a loud noise. When they came to their senses, the two were already in a waterlogged cave somewhere underground, and under their feet was a huge stone slab engraved with the formation, as if it was dug out alive from the seabed plane and thrown here. This formation actually teleported its own carrier, along with the activator. Chapter 791 Jade Morning Thunder. This is a spacious, fully enclosed underground cave, about the size of a football field. Looking up, you can see that the cave ceiling is very high. There is a shallow puddle under your feet, and there are tiny arcs of electricity jumping on the water. Luoyang tried to stretch his feet over, and found that it was a little numb. It was indeed thunder and lightning. With his attainments in thunder magic, he quickly determined that this kind of thunder and lightning was not thunder magic, but closer to some kind of natural thunder, and it was not under any control. It should be a magical power inspired by the blood of the demon race. Sure enough, as the two turned the corner, they saw a huge bird corpse lying in the center of the puddle. There were a lot of feathers floating on the surrounding water, and countless electric snakes were circling on it, wandering around, and their appearance was hideous. Luoyang scanned it directly and found that there was a thin scripture hidden in the bones of the giant bird corpse. The 3 words Yushan Lady were written on the scripture. Yushan Lady? Luoyang's mind immediately became active, and he heard Shirley beside him say, "That's the remains of the Thunderbird." Thunderbird? Luoyang was surprised. The phoenix gives birth to 9 chicks, and the Thunderbird is one of them. Shirley replied. Oh. Luoyang acted as if he had suddenly realized something, thinking that it was the remains of the Thunderbird. Although the human race said that the phoenix gave birth to 9 chicks, Long had also dealt with the feather race in the Eastern Empire realm, and knew that the descendants of the phoenix were actually only 5 of them. The other 4 have no blood relationship with the phoenix at all, just like the Eastern Empire of Dao and the Shirdo are collectively called the 6 Daos with the other 4 sects, but in fact they have nothing to do with the Jiao at all, just to gild their ancestors. The status of the Thunderbird in the feather race is similar to that of the Golden Winged Roc, and the bloodline rank is also quite high. However, the fertility rate of this race is very poor. Most Thunderbird couples only lay 1 egg for hundreds or thousands of years. It is a miracle that they have not become extinct until now. Husband, there seems to be a scripture in the remains of the Thunderbird. Shirley continued. Oh, indeed. Luoyang pretended to be surprised and said, I saw it too. How clever. Shirley thought for a moment and said, it is impossible for the scriptures to enter the body of the Thunderbird normally. There must be a corpse first, and then someone put it in, thus forming some kind of treasure container. Luoyang followed her analysis and said, Luli, look, the bones of the Thunderbird are hollow and fragile, and they are filled with a large amount of thunder and lightning. If you use a flying sword to forcibly take the scriptures and touch the bones, the violent thunder and lightning in them will directly gush out and destroy the scriptures. Thunder and lightning are not part of the 5 elements, so your 5 elements divine light is not easy to handle. Shirley continued to think, if you want to take the treasure, I'm afraid you have to find a cultivator who knows thunder magic, so that you may be able to get the scriptures smoothly. Not only do you have to understand thunder magic, you also have to be proficient in thunder magic. Luoyang also echoed, if your attainments are not enough, you can't do anything with the corpse of the Thunderbird. Yeah. Shirley thought to herself, what is he saying? Whether it is a cultivator who understands thunder magic or is proficient in thunder magic, there is no such thing here. Let's go, husband. Let's go. Luoyang sighed. In fact, even if Qiu Changtian was here, he didn't know what to do with the corpse of the Thunderbird. If he just wanted to destroy the corpse, he probably had 10,000 ways, but to keep the scriptures inside intact, Qiu Changtian was really at a loss. Or can we ask a Jin to help teleport? Let's talk about it later. Anyway, this place is so secret, and the scriptures won't run away by themselves. The two returned to the formation stone slab, and then Luo Yan activated the tripod again to teleport the two back to the deep-sea cave. Then he took out the Tianu divine shuttle, followed the space fluctuations left by the previous dragon monks, broke the barrier and went to the next space. The third cave is a dense, lush, and endless tropical rainforest. Looking around, there is no flat ground under your feet, and there are thick and tangled tree roots everywhere. Beyond the tree roots, there are wildly growing weeds. People walking about waist deep, which affects their movement. Luo Yan recalled the poisonous miasma swamp that Long Long had crossed in the Eastern Empire realm before, which was roughly the same as the environment here. Shiluli was not very used to it. She hugged Luo Yan's arm tightly and asked worriedly, "Will there be any insects here?" "Luli, we're cultivators," Luo Yan reminded her. "I feel sick when I see insects." Shiluli said that even as a cultivator, she couldn't let her not be afraid of insects. Luo Yan sighed and could only pull his wife forward, while constantly scanning the surroundings to make sure that no soft or multi-legged insects suddenly appeared. However, unlike the swamp in the Eastern Empire realm, although there were green plants everywhere here, no birds, beasts or even insects were found. It was obvious that when the cave was opened, the creator did not put any living things here at all. This also made Shiluli feel relieved. She took out the copper coin to calculate her fortune and redetermine the position of the dragon cultivators. "Strange," Shiluli suddenly said, "they seem to be fighting with something." "Really?" Luo Yan quickly scanned over. Probably because they had been delayed in the cave for a while, the two of them had been thrown out by the dragon cultivators for a distance, so that they were beyond the range of accurate scanning. Luo Yan could only scan the approximate position of the other party. As for how far away they were, how fast they were moving, and what they were doing, he had no idea. So the two of them moved forward quickly, and when the distance was pulled into the scanning range, Luo Yan realized that the battle on the opposite side had ended. In a clearing in the forest in the distance, a huge tree had been cut down and fell to the ground. 3 dragons stood in a triangle, staring at the remains of the tree in a daze. "What a 1,000-year-old tree demon!" The old dragon smiled with satisfaction. "If it continues to practice here, it is unknown whether it will achieve the right result one day. It's a pity that it met your majesty, proving that this tree demon was destined to have this disaster." Xiao flattered him calmly. The old dragon was obviously more and more satisfied, and continued. "The tree heart of this tree demon is a good thing. Whether it is for practicing wood-related Taoism, refining elixirs, or feeding exotic beasts, it is infinitely useful." As he said that, he put the tree heart into the storage bag. "Wait!" Xiao suddenly said, "Someone is following us." Luo Yan's heart was shocked. "We were discovered?" "How were we discovered?" "I scanned all the way here, and there was nothing unusual." "Someone?" the old dragon asked in surprise. "To enter this cave, you need a magic weapon or secret method that can break through the space. Not ordinary people can come in." "I'll go back and take a look first," Xiao asked. "Okay." The old dragon nodded. "No matter who it is, kill them without mercy." Seeing Xiao turned around and came to him, and seeing Shiluli's face changed, there was no doubt that the fortune teller had predicted something. Luo Yan hurriedly said, "Not good, we have been discovered, go." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 792 Peacock Luo Yan. The two men retreated hurriedly. Luo Yan was also puzzled. He heard Shiluli suddenly say in annoyance, "I know. It should be that when I was using magic to predict his fate, the other party noticed the clue. So it wasn't my problem." Luo Yan was stunned for a moment and asked, "Magic calculation, can it be detected by the other side? I thought that magical calculation methods would not be discovered. As long as the magic calculation is used to spy on the other party, traces will inevitably be left." Shiluli explained, "The difference is that most cultivators who don't understand magic calculation cannot detect such traces at all." Judging from the other party's reaction and response, she should not have practiced the art of magic calculation. I guess she just realized that someone was calculating her through some special magic weapon or secret method. Because it is an anti-reconnaissance method provided by magic weapons or secret methods, the other party cannot lock us for a long time. As long as we keep a sufficient distance or delay enough time, we should be able to get rid of it. Even so, the other party will eventually realize that someone is following. Luo Yan just said a sentence, and then he suddenly exclaimed, "Fuck, she flies so fast." Flying in the clouds is a unique bloodline, a magical power of the dragon clan. It uses the water-type demon energy to gather under the body to offset the weight, and then uses the wood-type demon energy to summon demon wind to propel the body forward. Although the principle is like this, the effect of the display is roughly determined by the bloodline rank and the lower limit by the cultivation attainment. The flying cloud and mist that Shiro displayed on the opposite side was undoubtedly a manifestation of very high attainments. God knows how many years she has studied this magical power. Although the momentum of driving the cloud is not obvious, the speed is amazing. In Luo Yan's scanning field of vision, it almost rushed towards him in a straight line, and in an instant, it went 1/3 of the way. Luo Yan was also shocked. Don't look at this cheap master who is kind and easy to talk to when facing Long, but after all, he was born in the crisis-ridden Jielong bloodline. He has been living in the Kanglong clan for who knows how long. Maybe he has 3, 4, 5 or 6 secret killing moves hidden in his hand, and he will play them all without hesitation later, and kill me and Lily to pieces. He hurriedly took Shilili to leave, but the opponent's speed was too fast. How could he get away? The dragon has not arrived yet, but the attack has arrived first. It is the boundless 10-direction dragon power. The invisible dragon's might was overwhelming, and Shilili was like a small animal encountering a tiger. Her heart almost stopped beating, her limbs were stiff, and her lips were numb, and she could not make any movements. However, Long had received Shiro's instruction before, and knew that this cheap master valued dragon's might the most, and then magic skills. Therefore, he had guessed her first move, and immediately helped Arjun to release the control. At the same time, he hugged Shilili, who was unable to move, with his left hand, and grabbed the Tianu divine shuttle with his right hand, and arched it in, and instantly flashed a long distance. If it were another human cultivator, he might be caught off guard by the dragon's might. After all, Luo Yan had Long's trumpet, so how could he not know the tactical intention of Shiro's move? The opponent came from a distance, flying above the sea of trees instead of in the forest. Otherwise, he would be blocked by various trees and would definitely not be able to move so fast. Flying above the sea of trees, the line of sight is bound to be blocked by the heavy tree canopy, and the dragon's might is a large-scale magic power, which has a mysterious connection with the dragon's body. Once the enemy is intimidated, he will immediately feel it and know the specific location of the enemy. It seems to be a control skill, but in fact it is essentially for reconnaissance. Luo Yan used the Tianu divine shuttle to teleport out, and he also wanted to immediately leave the original position locked by Shio. Sure enough, before the next second, Shio's backhand attack followed. I saw the cold wind, frost and rain all over the sky, coming from the back like a cold wave, and suddenly wrapped the forest in a large piece of silver frost. The flowers and plants withered, the trees were bleak, as if the deep winter was dead, and there was no vitality. This move, Luo Yan's pupil shrank again. This move is not a common magic of the Dragon Clan, but a special and unique magic recorded in the secret scroll of the dragon, called the Art of the Eternal Night Cold Tide. The volume records that if a Demon King level dragon is fully activated, it can create a huge snowy environment, and even completely block the sunlight in the sky. Although the wind and snow are fierce, the real killer move is not the cold, but Luo Yan did not dare to slack off. He put his palms together and quickly activated the innate 5 elements of chaos. Suddenly, a large number of frost-edged ice flowers exploded in the forest in front of him. They were several feet high and extremely sharp, piercing and tearing all the surroundings. This eternal night cold wave technique, the wind and snow in the sky are all illusions, disguises, and pretexts. The real killer move is the demon element bomb hidden in it. The temperature is extremely low and colorless and transparent. It is difficult to see with the naked eye. It drifts around with the blizzard and then explodes suddenly. With the fragile flesh of the human cultivators, it is basically difficult to be beaten to a complete corpse. It is an extremely vicious technique. After all, it is the East Empire realm where wars are frequent. The magic skills that can be passed down to this day may not be powerful, but they are definitely insidious and dirty. Luo Yan's timely 5 elements divine light was indeed a fairy-level secret technique. It hit the large piece of condensed ice and frost, and immediately swept across the area. Shio's original tactical thinking was very clear. Longwei was hit by one and escaped by another. The opponent must understand the Dragon Clan's tactics and will most likely evacuate the original place quickly. Therefore, she used the technique of Eternal Night Cold Tide, which was a spell with a larger range than Longwei, to force the opponent out from the cover of the forest. However, the situation was far beyond her expectations. She saw the edge of the cold wave suddenly flashing with 5-color divine light. Its color was as blazing as the sun, its momentum was as vast as the sea, and it rolled back rapidly from below, breaking through the snow and wind, and rushing towards herself. Xiao hurriedly drove the clouds and mist, twisted her body and retreated quickly, and urged various powerful spells to throw them forward, trying to stop the 5 elements divine light at all costs. Unfortunately, the water magic that the Jielong clan is best at, no matter how powerful it is like a drop in the ocean when it falls into the divine light. It instantly becomes invisible and disintegrates. Until Lao Long and Long Xiaoqi arrived from behind, the former spit out a dragon ball and hit the 5-element divine light directly. Suddenly, a large grey barrier appeared in the air, blocking the 5-color divine light. The latter was already far away from Luo Yan. Although he could not get the replenishment of true energy, he did not disappear. He just kept changing colors and continued to compete with the barrier. The innate 5 elements of chaos divine light. The old dragon said in surprise, "Are there people from the Peacock clan here?" "I don't know." Xiao also said quickly, "There are 2 people on the other side. One was restrained by my dragon power, and the other broke free in time. I guess his cultivation is not high, but this divine light is really tricky." "Of course his cultivation is not high." The old dragon snorted coldly and said in a low voice, "If it was a peacock at the level of the Demon King, you would have died on the spot if you used this 5 elements of chaos divine light to hit you." He looked forward again and took the dragon ball back into his mouth. A crazy expression suddenly appeared on his face, and he murmured, "The other party is going to run away after one strike, without any desire to fight. Peacock, your majesty, it's not a good time to delay now." Xiao saw that the old dragon was starting to get sick again, and hurriedly reminded him. "Well." The old dragon came back to his senses after a long while and said, "The peacock retreated with his companions, and I don't know if he went to ask for help. Let's fight quickly and find that divine tripod as soon as possible and leave this place." Chapter 793 Strange Beast. Luo Yan took Shiluli and fled several miles away under the cover of the forest. Shiluli barely managed to break free from the dragon's might and struggled to take a pill. "They didn't catch up?" Shiluli asked nervously. Although the lady was smart, she had too few experiences of fighting life and death, and her psychological quality was a bit behind. Luo Yan gently stroked her back and nodded. "Yes." "Why?" Shiluli frowned and asked. It's not that she was eager for those dragon monks to catch up, but she was worried that there might be some conspiracy or trap here. "Because they think I'm very strong." Luo Yan laughed. Shiluli was silent for a moment and asked, "The Peacock clan?" "Forget it, the pretense failed. This lady is too smart, sometimes it's really not a good thing." Luo Yan had to nod and admit it, saying, "If the innate 5 elements of the great chaos divine light is learned by a human cultivator, will anyone believe it if it is told out?" "Indeed." Shiluli sighed. "Just like when a human cultivator throws out a talisman like it's free during a fight, everyone will immediately think that the other party is a Penglai cultivator. This is a stereotype that has been accumulated over the years. What should we do now?" Shiluli continued to ask. "Why don't you calculate it, madam? It's a matter of life and death, so be cautious." Shiluli shook her head and refused. "What if the other party sees it again and follows the key to find us?" "Well," Luo Yan thought to himself that what he said made sense, "so I'd better scan." He scanned over here and found that there was no trace of Shiro and others within the range. Running so fast? Luo Yan looked around again and was surprised to find that the 2 of them had come to a valley at this time. The reason for this surprise was that the way they had walked before was full of wildly growing trees and weeds, and there was almost no place for people to rest comfortably. But there was an open space in this valley. The trees on the periphery grew to the edge of the open space and did not continue to invade, as if they were blocked by some invisible barrier. Shiluli also noticed something strange here, and speculated thoughtfully. Maybe there is a treasure hidden here. Luo Yan thought, how could I not know? Seeing that the trees outside could not come in, it was obvious that there was a treasure that could restrain the trees. But I scanned and scanned, but I didn't find any trace at all. There was not even any spatial fluctuation. Can you do it, a jinn? Stupid. Kunlun Mirror laughed at him. The reason why the trees avoid this place is not because there is a treasure hidden here, but because some kind of treasure has been here before, and the trees are afraid of the breath it left behind. So that's it. Luo Yan suddenly realized, and seeing that Shiluli was still frowning and fortune-telling, he reminded her, Madam, is there a possibility that some kind of treasure has been here and left a breath, which caused the trees to grow around this area? Oh. Shirley also understood, and made another fortune-telling, and indeed confirmed this statement. In the direction. She pointed to the front and said, it should go in that direction. The two of them ignored the dragon monks and quickly moved forward in the direction where the treasure left. After a while, a similar open space appeared in front of them again, and trees could only grow around the edge of the open space. Luo Yan thought again. You said, if this strange treasure moves in a straight line, then the area without trees should be in a straight line, connecting the open space just now to the open space here. But, in fact, there are two unconnected open spaces. Shirley pondered for a moment and said, so, it is a movement similar to jumping. Every time the magic weapon lands, it destroys the surrounding trees and vegetation, and then jumps up, passing through the air, landing in the next place, and creating such a treeless open space again. In this case, it may not be a magic weapon. Luo Yan said doubtfully, could it be some kind of strange beast? He flew up directly on his sword and raised his height above the treetops. In the green sea of trees in the distance, there are still similar circular open spaces, but there is no trace of strange beasts jumping around. Shirley squatted down, looked at the ground at his feet, and said, there is mud outside, but there is sand in this open space. Is sand produced by burning mud? Luo Yan asked in surprise. Yes. Shirley put two fingers together, and the Zhejihan Yuan sword inserted into the ground, quickly shaking the sand to both sides. Husband, look, even a few feet underground, it is still this kind of dry sand, the other party is not jumping in the air. Luo Yan also reacted quickly, but moving underground. Every time it breaks out of the ground, it destroys the surrounding trees. This can be explained. If the other party is hiding underground, it will be difficult to find. Shirley began to tell the fortune. Luo Yan also scanned it and found that the surrounding ground was full of mud, but the ground here was sand, and it kept winding down, and the soil quality was obviously different from the surrounding. I can't figure it out. Shirley sighed, maybe I have calculated too much today. Luo Yan suddenly became strange. Is your magic calculation battery powered, and will it run out of power after using it for a long time? As if she could see her husband's doubtful thoughts, Shirley explained. To give an example, the fate of all things is arranged by heaven, and some people can guess the subsequent arrangements of heaven by spying on heaven. The so-called spying is just taking advantage of the loopholes of heaven. If you spy too much in a short period of time, heaven will inevitably react. It is easy to get into trouble if you force it to probe again. In that case, my lady, don't worry about it for now, leave it to me. Luo Yan said hurriedly. He rubbed his hands together, and rubbed out 5-colored divine light, which shot quickly towards the ground. Soon, the sand and soil under the ground were completely dissolved by the 5-colored divine light, and it also condensed into a gold and iron corridor around it, fixing and supporting the tunnel to prevent collapse. Shirley looked down and saw that Luo Yan had even made a step for her thoughtfully, which was really warm. As they walked down the steps, Shirley suddenly asked, husband, is the temperature around us a little high? Yes, the fire spirit is a little too active. Luo Yan nodded and said, I think it's either some kind of fire treasure or a fire beast. They continued to walk down for about a few hundred feet, and suddenly the surroundings began to tremble strangely. Be careful. Luo Yan immediately activated his true essence, and the 5-colored divine light suddenly surged in all directions. Shirley also pinched the Do formula, activating the Tuigu Chenya Pokusingzar, forming a thick and solid barrier around the two of them, ready to defend against attacks from all around. After a moment, the corridor in front suddenly collapsed. From the gap in the wall, 3 pairs of scarlet round eyeballs appeared. Chapter 794. Fire Cave Heaven. 3 pairs of eyes? Luo Yan was a little confused for a moment, and he couldn't think of any monster with 3 pairs of eyes. It wasn't until the other party half showed its body from the crack that Luo Yan and Shirley saw clearly that it was a huge spider. The spider was about several feet long, with 8 thick hairy legs, and red lines on its body like flames. The 3 pairs of eyes were as dazzling as rupees, revealing a kind of weird krill beauty. Literary spider? Shirley said in surprise. Luo Yan was also frightened when he heard it. Now that he has the innate 5 elements of chaos divine light, even if he faces the Uning Elder head-on, he can retreat safely. The previous escape from Shiro is the best proof. But the literary spider is a famous beast in the world, and even the immortals and Buddhas can hardly subdue it, not to mention the 2 people in the Jindan realm. That's not a Wen spider. Kumlinjing suddenly said, it's just an ordinary fire spider. But I don't know how long the other party has lived here, and his cultivation level is also at the nascent soul level. You should not think about fighting hard, just run away. Luo Yan pinched his fingers with one hand to maintain the 5-color divine light, and with the other hand he pulled Shiluli, and the two slowly retreated facing the fire spider. The fire spider was extremely ferocious, and seemed to want to pounce on them, but was afraid of the power of Luo Yan's 5-element divine light, so it just kept knocking on the ground, and the big claws in its mouth kept opening and closing, as if to intimidate the two. Following the passage and quickly returning to the ground, the two did not dare to breathe a sigh of relief, but quickly flew into the air on the sword and left the forest. Let's continue to follow those dragon monks. Shiluli sighed, try not to explore alone like this anymore. Luo Yan also lamented in his heart. Looking back on this trip to the secret realm, except for the Red Dust 100 Worlds map that they picked up for free, most of the treasures they encountered were not obtained. In the Jinxing secret realm, the treasure is near the Earth Pole magnetic mother and cannot be taken. In the Water secret realm, the treasure is in the body of the Thunderbird wreckage and cannot be taken. Now in the Wood secret realm, we have encountered this strange beast, the Fire Spider, and we can't deal with it. All of the above points to one problem. The level of this cave secret realm is too high, and it is not something that a Jindan cultivator can come and go freely in. That is to say, Luo Yan and Shiluli are not ordinary Jindan cultivators, otherwise they would not even be able to pass the first cave. Okay. He sighed and said, let those dragons open the way for us. After readjusting their strategy, the two continued to rush to their previous location. Because the dragons had discovered their existence, the two were extremely cautious on the way forward. Although Shiluli had calculated too many hexagrams today, he had to take risks now that his life and death were at stake, and he dared not let go of the copper coins. Hexagrams also have different levels of importance. Shiluli knew which hexagrams were likely to attract the attention and even fear of the heavenly below, and which hexagrams were more secretive and difficult to be discovered. Luo Yan was also very busy. Almost every 5 or 6 seconds, he would ask Ah Jing if there was any danger scanned, which annoyed Kunlin Jing and asked him to shut up again and again. Finally, they came to the edge of a forest rift. Shiluli looked down and said, they should have gone down here. Yeah. Luo Yan scanned carefully and found several traps. Although from the perspective of the human race, many places were designed to be quite insidious and difficult to defend, Luo Yan had studied in the dragon race for so many years after all, and with Ah Jing's scanning to fill in the gaps, he naturally had a complete understanding of these traps. He then used the 5 elements divine light to sweep the places where the traps were. There were waves everywhere, like mountains collapsing and cracking, erupting in various locations in the rift. Rocks flew through the air, thunder roared, and air waves rolled up thousands of feet of flying sand, shocking Shiluli who was next to him, and her face turned pale. She thought to herself that if she were to count by herself, even if she found 9 out of 10 places in advance, the remaining one would be enough to kill her. It's not as rough as Luo Yan's 5 elements divine light. No matter where you have traps, as long as you sweep them all, they will disappear. If it's my Southern Dipper Galaxy secret art, it seems that I can't do it. The Southern Dipper Galaxy secret art is good for trapping the enemy, but the opponent's traps are hidden under the rock layer, and the water of the Milky Way has to be used to violently impact the rock layers everywhere, and the efficiency is much lower. It seems that after returning, I still have to learn a more powerful Taoist method, so as not to hinder my husband next time. The 5 elements divine light swept through, and the Rift Valley had completely changed its appearance, and there was no trace of the original. Let's go. After the landslide was completely calmed down, Luo Yan took Shiluli and jumped down. The two flew down on the sword, passing through many chaotic rock layers with jagged rocks, and finally reached the bottom of the valley. This place has been completely buried by gravel and sand, and it is impossible to tell what the original terrain was. Luo Yan determined the spatial orientation, and then threw the Tianu divine shuttle in his hand, piercing through the space and opening the way to the next cave heaven. The two entered the next cave heaven, and as expected, it was a scene like a scorching hell. In the distance was a volcano with black smoke and flowing red-hot lava. The air was filled with a certain burnt smell, and from time to time there were pressing heat waves that hit the face, as if to burn through the skin and flesh. Fire cave heaven. Luo Yan asked with concern, Luli, are you feeling any discomfort? Shiluli did not answer, but just pinched the Taoist formula, and a little starlight appeared on her body. Ordinary cultivators in such a high-temperature environment either cast spells or take medicine, otherwise they would be burned by the high temperature. But in the 5 latitudes Jintan secret records that Shiluli practiced, there happened to be a Taoist method to resist high temperatures, and Luo Yan was proficient in the innate 5 elements of divine light, so it goes without saying in this regard. The two of them used their magical powers to protect their bodies, and then flew forward on the sword. In other words, this was not the first time that Luo Yan had experienced such a high-temperature environment. For example, he had experienced the trial secret realm of the East Sea Palace, the Yuan Cave under the Thunder Cave Pin of Shu Mounting, the 100,000 firehouses of the Kunlun Divine Fire Road ruins, etc. Therefore, he was calm and composed, constantly scanning the surroundings. In the lava below, there were many crocodile-like monsters swimming. That's the flame crocodile. Shilui said, its sound is like a roar, and it is said that it can hurt people from a distance. We should not descend too low, otherwise it will alarm them and it will be troublesome. Yeah. Luo Yan tried to raise the flying sword, but found that the higher it went, the hotter the temperature around it became. In the end, he couldn't even resist the 5-color divine light, and his true essence was consumed. So that's it. If you go too high, you will be burned, and if you go too low, you will attract the attention of the flame crocodile and be attacked by a group. You must maintain an appropriate height to fly the sword. After moving forward for about half an hour again, the figures of 3 dragon monks finally appeared in Luo Yan's scanning range. The old dragon was fighting with a huge fire alligator. The other party's body was as big as a mountain. Any slap of its tail was as powerful as the collapse of the sky and the earth. Xiao and Longxiaki were on the side, but since it was a battle between the ancestors, they could not help at all and could only fly round. Husband. Because the sound of the fight was too loud, Shilui asked, they seem to be fighting with something. Should we go over to take a look? Go over to take a look, in fact, to see if there is any opportunity to take advantage of. Luo Yan pondered for a moment, and suddenly realized that the old dragon in the distance did not seem to be fighting seriously. The most obvious point is that the opponent did not use the dragon's power from beginning to end, and rarely used magic. Most of the time, he fought the fire alligator with his body. Looking at the movement of Shiro and Longxiaki, although it seemed aimless, they were actually always alert to the surroundings, as if they were guarding against something. So that's it, are they trying to test and lure us to show up? Chapter 795 Shen and Ding. Luo Yan and Shilui had not shown up yet, which made the 3 dragons a little anxious. Forget it. The old dragon suddenly said, I guess they have seen through it. He suddenly stretched out a finger and froze the fire crocodile, then spit out a dragon ball from his mouth and smashed it directly on the back of the fire crocodile. The fire crocodile was covered with hard scales and was invulnerable to swords and guns, but it collapsed immediately after being hit by the dragon ball. The fire crocodile turned around suddenly in pain, and forced the old dragon back with a flick of its tail, and then fled directly into the depths of the lava. The old dragon did not chase them, but just said to Shiro and Longxiaki, to enter the last cave, there is only one weak point in space here. You stay here, they can't follow us anymore. As he said that, the old dragon spit out the dragon ball again, smashed through the space barrier, and then stepped in. Luo Yan, who was far away, watched Shiro and the others stay where they were, and suddenly he had a headache. This strategy of dividing the troops was not very clever, but it just hit the weak spot of Luo Yan and his wife. Even if they pulled Shiro out alone, Luo Yan and his wife would not be able to defeat her. Shilui also calculated this and sighed helplessly. Husband, it seems that we can't go any deeper this time, why don't we go back? It's not easy to get here, I'm unwilling to give up. Luo Yan said with difficulty. Husband. Shilui had to persuade him politely, don't forget that we couldn't take away the treasures and strange beasts we encountered along the way, right? It can be seen that the difficulty of this secret realm is far beyond our strength. Instead of continuing to take risks and gaining nothing, it is better to stay here and report to the headmaster of Yu King Temple, and then make plans. Seeing that Luo Yan was still unmoved, Shilui had to act coquettishly and said, okay, husband, I'll make you delicious food when you go back. Alas, this is the only way. Luo Yan finally gave in and nodded in agreement. The two turned around and flew back. Leaving the fire cave heaven and returning to the wood cave heaven, Shilui suddenly reacted. Wait, didn't my husband make up his mind a long time ago to use the Red Dust 100 Worlds map to steal all the treasures obtained by the demon dragon? In this case, whether to continue to follow in depth or turn around and leave, what difference does it make? Why should I coax him? She was so depressed that she couldn't help but ask, husband, aren't you going to use the Red Dust 100 Worlds map to take away the old dragon's treasures? Oh. Luo Yan seemed to have just reacted and nodded, wait a little longer, let's talk about it after we get out of this secret realm. Seeing that his expression didn't seem to be false, Shilui was immediately shaken again, thinking that maybe she had misunderstood him. Just now, he forgot the existence of the Red Dust 100 Worlds map, so he was unwilling to give up, instead of deliberately singing against me and asking me to coax him. Thinking of this, Shirley also breathed a sigh of relief. In any case, as long as you don't treat me as a fool, it's fine. The two of them left the secret place and returned to the Shenangjia Mountains, and then flew towards the East China Sea. Shirley took out the Red Dust 100 Worlds map and asked, "What are you looking for near the Yang Scroll?" "A small bottle, a scripture, a Taoist robe, pearls, and a piece of wood." The Red Dust 100 Worlds map counted and said, "Oh, and another small plate was stuffed in." "Small plate?" Luo Yan asked. "A small yellow plate with a lot of lines drawn on it." The Red Dust 100 Worlds map described it. "It's probably talking about gossip," Shirley reminded. "What gossip?" The Red Dust 100 Worlds map asked. "Don't worry about it, tell me what else is there." Luo Yan interrupted it quickly. "Gossip is something that can't be explained in a few words, so it's better to tell it to do its job quickly." "It should be gone," the Red Dust 100 Worlds map continued to confirm, and suddenly hummed, "Huh. Ah? What happened?" Luo Yan asked quickly. "The big pot you mentioned before has come in." Hong Chenbis Hichu replied, "It's just very broken, it's completely different from what I saw before." "Is the Shenanjing damaged?" Luo Yan and Shilili were both shocked. "Yes." Hong Chenbis Hichu nodded and said, "There are a lot of green things." "Oh, it's rusted." The two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Magical weapons should not rust naturally. The only explanation is that the origin of the magic weapon is damaged, and it can't even resist the erosion of the external environment. But as long as the true essence is replenished in time, it can be restored after all. The fear is that irreversible damage, such as a flying sword with half of the sword body destroyed, if it is said that it can still be used as a flying sword, it is purely a pipe dream. According to Hong Chenbis Hichu, at least it is not a serious problem like the lack of the tripod ears and tripod feet of the Shenanjing, it can still be repaired. "Husband, do it," Shirley said in a deep voice. "Wait a little longer." Luo Yan waved his hand. "What if there are other treasures? If we take the Shenanjing, the old dragon will definitely find something wrong the next time he puts treasures in, and he won't be able to get any treasures after that. But you also have to consider what should we do if the old dragon likes the Shenanjing and doesn't want to put it back in the storage bag." Shirley insisted, "While the Shenanjing is still in the storage bag, we should take it out quickly to prevent accidents." Luo Yan thought for a moment and thought that this was indeed the truth. For example, most of the monks in Pengliu King Temple like to put their flying swords in their sword bags and use them when needed, but Luo Yan carries the Wang Chan Kun sword on his back, and there is no other reason, just that he thinks the sword looks very majestic and wants his fellow monks to see more. What if the old dragon is also a cocky and show-off character, and takes out the Shenanjing to play with it? Even if you don't play with it, you have to study it, right? Thinking of this, Luo Yan hardened his heart and said, "Do it." The Red Dust 100 Worlds map received the order and sent the things over. First, there was a pill bottle. The material was neither gold nor jade. It was grey and looked like ceramic. Luo Yan was very cautious and did not open the cork. He just put it into a separate storage bag. After the lesson of this incident, he did not dare to put everything into the Tiangong Bai Baho bag. My Tiangong Bai Baho bag has much more things in it than that old dragon. If anything goes wrong, I'm afraid I will cry to death in front of the tablet of my master. Then there was a scripture. Luo Yan glanced at the title of the book. It was a kind of mental method of calming the mind and concentrating the ki to suppress the mind from going astray. This thing can be collected by the immortal level dragon clan. I think it must be extraordinary, but Luo Yan has Arjun to help him. It is impossible for him to go astray, so he quietly put it away. Next is a Taoist robe. It doesn't look special. Put it away and go back to Yu King Temple for identification. Then, there were the 1,000-year-old giant clam beads, the Jasper tree heart, the 8-diagram plate, the Shenanjing, and the Yang scroll of the Red Dust 100 Worlds chart. Although they had heard Lao Long's explanation and knew that these were all valuable treasures, Luo Yan and Shilili's eyes were still firmly attracted to the Shenanjing. Chapter 796. Dispute in the weapon-making circle. The Shenanjing is a bronze square tripod with 4 legs and 2 ears. It looks ordinary on the outside, but actually, there is nothing special about it. When the true essence was injected into it, it was like injecting into a stone, and there was no reaction. The two of them did not have time to test one by one, and rushed to the direction of Pengliu King Temple. However, at this time, Pengliu King Temple was not calm. The 7 elders who specialized in making instruments in the whole sect came to visit the head of Kshandu to discuss the redistribution of resources. When the stone tripod was still there, the output and quality of the magic tools of Tiangong workshop were the best in the whole temple. Therefore, we had no objection to getting the largest share in the distribution of resources in the sect. One of the elders said dissatisfiedly, but now that the stone tripod has unfortunately fallen, the number of high-level magic tools produced by Tiangong workshop has dropped sharply. If the original share distribution remains unchanged, it will be a bit unreasonable. Ahem. Master Kshandu obviously wanted to smooth things over, so he coughed and said, I see that the income brought to the temple by Tiangong workshop doesn't seem to have dropped much. That's only because they sell extremely low-quality flying swords to independent cultivators in large quantities and at low prices, so their income has rebounded. Another elder took out a flying sword and showed it to everyone. Look, it's the simplest Taoist seal, and there's no seal on it. If it suffers any strong Taoist impact, it will immediately become ineffective and damaged. A few days ago, an old friend came to me with this flying sword and asked me if it was produced by Oyu King Temple. I didn't have the face to answer. This, although Master Kshandu could not forge swords, he knew how to distinguish between good and bad. The other party waved the flying sword in front of his eyes. He couldn't say this sword is good against his conscience, so he had to insist. There is no regulation in the temple about the quality of the magic weapons sold to the outside world. The headmaster is right. The third elder said, however, if you sell good products, you naturally need good materials. If you sell bad products, why do you need so many resources? Tiangong Fan can naturally take the path of small profits but quick turnover, but everyone knows how much it costs to do so. What we mean is that if Tiangong Fan only produces Jindan level magic weapons, then we should simply treat them according to the treatment of Jindan level weapon makers, and temporarily reduce the monthly salary of all materials. Wait until the quality of the magic weapons they produce improves, then it won't be too late to raise it back. That's right. The elders echoed and made noises. The headmaster of Kshandu smiled bitterly and said nothing. Although these people said it was a temporary reduction, the extra resource share after the reduction was immediately divided up by these elders. If they want to raise it back later, whose share should they take it from? Can you spit out the meat you have eaten? It must be a mess. The head of Kshandu pondered for a moment, then looked at Elder Miaoling of Yuguan Pavilion. Since the death of Elder Shiding, Yuguan Pavilion has become the largest instrument-making school, and Elder Miaoling's reputation among the instrument makers in the temple has also risen rapidly, and he seems to be replacing Elder Shiding. As for Master Jimnoon, although he is a second-grade golden elixir, he has not reached the nascent soul stage after all. For the sect, it may be a seat of cultivation, but the instrument-making circle does not care about your potential. If you can't refine a magic weapon of a sufficient grade, the seniors will not bother to pay attention to you at all. With the knowledge of the head of Kshandu, how can he not see that although these people are jointly visiting, they are actually circling around Elder Miaoling? Even if everyone divides the meat, these people are just knives to divide the meat. After all, the matter still has to be discussed with the person holding the knife. Ha ha. Elder Miaoling still looked like a kind-hearted old woman. Seeing the headmaster looking at her, she leaned on her cane and said, Shiding's body is still warm, and you were forcing him too much. Is that really okay? The voices of the elders who were still arguing suddenly stopped, and each of them showed a somewhat ashamed expression. Act. Keep acting. The headmaster of Kshandu sneered in his heart. Master, I have to say something fair. Elder Miaoling continued, the distribution rules in the sect were set by the Wonxiang Immortal in the past. Generally speaking, there is only one fairness. How much resources are taken, how much goods are produced. Since the fall of the stone tripod, the output of magic tools in Tiangong Fan has dropped sharply, and everyone can understand, Jin Noonsinran has just formed a golden elixir, and it may not be possible to fully integrate his father-in-law's ability to make tools in such a short time. Therefore, this distribution system has been maintained for several years, mainly to give Tiangong Fan time to recover. Now that time has passed, the output gap of Tiangong Fan will naturally have to be filled by us elders. Otherwise, we can't explain it to the Taoist friends outside, don't you think? Master Kshandu pondered in silence, but in his heart he had to admit that Elder Miaoling was right. Penglayu King Temple can have its current status. On the one hand, it is politically supported by Kumlantai King sect, and on the other hand, it is widely connected with good people outside. pills, talismans, magic tools. Many high-level cultivation resources can only be produced by Penglai King Temple, so the various high-level immortals who need them naturally have to give Penglai a face. The death of Elder Shiding of Tiangong-fan has caused a gap in the production of high-level magic tools. In the past, high-level cultivators who wanted to find Elder Shiding to refine magic tools now don't know who to find. Some even came to ask the Chuandu Sect Master. What can the Chuandu Sect Master do? If there is really no replacement, he can only patiently appease them. If Elder Mowling and others can improve in the way of making tools and make up for the vacancy left by Elder Shiding, it will definitely be the best. But this means that the resource share given to Tiangong-fan will be reduced accordingly. Now the sect protection formation still depends on Master Jin-Dun to maintain it. How can we add insult to injury to Tiangong-fan? I heard that Master Jin-Dun is now in charge of the sect protection formation. Elder Mowling suddenly asked. Yes. Master Chuandu nodded and said. Ha, it has been many years since the demon cult perceives Penglai. Elder Mowling smiled gently. You have been repairing it for so long, but it is still not repaired. I think it is because Master Jin-Dun is not familiar with the formation. I went out to visit a friend recently and happened to meet Senior Yunxian. I heard that the Penglai formation was broken by the demon cult, so you said you were willing to come back to help. The head of Chuandu was slightly startled. Elder Yunxian, the former elder of Penglai King Temple, mainly studied the way of talismans, but also dabbled in the study of formations. But later this elder ran away to establish a sect, so many Penglai monks don't know this elder now. The sect protection formation, according to the meaning of the head of Chuandu, must not be handled by anyone other than Penglai monks. But Elder Yunxian is not an outsider strictly speaking, but a former Penglai person. It is hard to say whether he can be trusted. I have to ask the Wonxiang Immortal for instructions. Chapter 797. Advance Investment. The head of Chuandu sect found the Wonxiang Immortal and told him about the matter. The Wonxiang Immortal immediately understood what he meant. With so many elders coming together, the head of Chuandu sect must give an explanation. But if he favors Jin-Dun Shinran without reason, these elders will definitely not let it go. If it gets out, it will also be a blow to the head of the sect's reputation and prestige. But if the Wonxiang Immortal speaks, no matter whether the elders are convinced or not, they have to do it obediently without any room for negotiation. The head of the sect must be fair and just, but the Immortal can be unreasonable. Not only Penglai King Temple, but all the sects in the world are like this. In that case, you go out and tell them. Wonxiang Immortal stroked his beard, thought for a while, and replied, the resource share for Tiangong-fan remains unchanged. This is what I mean. Ask them if they have any objections. Immortal. The head of Chuandu sect sighed. Is this unfair? Unfair, of course, is just a euphemism. What the Chuandu sect leader really meant was that you are speaking out directly to defend Master Jin-Dun, and it seemed a bit too much. In fact, you only need to say don't change it for now, we'll talk about it later. No elder dared to ask you what is the so-called later. Chuandu. Wonxiang Immortal asked leisurely, do you think the realm of cultivation is more important, or the level of weapon making is more important? Of course, the realm of cultivation is more important. The Chuandu sect leader answered without hesitation. The reason why Tiangong-fan is in this predicament is because Master Jin-Dun's weapon-making level is not high. That's not the case. Wonxiang Immortal continued, it's because he is only of the Jindan realm. But he is a second-grade Jindan after all, and his success rate and grade of forming an infant are higher than other Jindan cultivators. So even in the future, whether it is cultivation strength or weapon-making level, Tiangong-fan will sooner or later return to the top. It is foolish to let Tiangong-fan become disunited just because of the current predicament. The Chuandu sect leader suddenly realized. As for whether to protect Tiangong-fan, he actually didn't have much doubt, but if he was the Wonxiang Immortal, he really couldn't do it directly to favor Tiangong-fan. But as the Wonxiang Immortal said, the current predicament of Tiangong-fan is only a temporary emergency. With the second-grade golden elixir of Jin-Yun Shinran, it is only a matter of time for Tiangong-fan to rise again. Wonxiang Immortal's voice of support for Jin-Yun Shinran at this time may make the temple feel that the Immortal is biased, but it will make the future Tiangong-fan return to its heart, which is undoubtedly very cost-effective. After figuring out the relationship, Chuandu Master resigned with Wonxiang Immortal. At the same time, Luoyan and Shilili finally arrived in Penglai and placed the Shenending in Tiangong-fan. Shilili went to inform the Master and the Immortal, while Luoyan kept scanning and studying it around it, but still did not find any way to open it. That's strange. Kunlun Mirror said puzzledly, from the scanning results, this thing is no different from an ordinary bronze tripod. Who stipulated that the Shenandoah must be a magic weapon? Sumin Jian also joined in the fun. In my opinion, there is nothing special about the Shenandoah itself, but isn't the most precious thing the secrets of the various schools of thought recorded on the body of the tripod? Oh. Right. Luo Yan immediately remembered this and hurriedly began to memorize the various ancient characters on the body of the tripod. I have to write them down quickly. He scanned very quickly, almost 10 lines at a glance, and quickly memorized the contents above. Legend has it that Shannon was a great man of the human race, and he was extremely proficient in all the schools of thought, but he was best at identifying herbs and refining elixirs. Now it seems that it is true. Among the many methods recorded on it, the art of refining elixirs accounts for a full third. The remaining talismans, arithmetic, casting, etc., although most of them were covered, were of high quality. They could be said to be pearls of wisdom, and every sentence could be thought-provoking, which could enlighten people and open their minds. While he was copying notes frantically, Shili found the headmaster of Kshandu and saw that he was drinking tea with several elders. Seeing that Master Dongyu came to visit, the faces of several elders were a little ugly. After the headmaster of Kshandu returned, he bluntly said that the ratio of resource allocation could not be changed because of the words of the immortal. Since the immortal said so, everyone had nothing to say, but the resource allocation ratio remained unchanged, and it did not say that the sales position allocation could not be changed. The so-called sales position allocation refers to the shops opened by Penglai in many markets, and which shops can sell which goods on the stalls. After all, the sales of the popular shops with a large number of customers and the unpopular shops with few customers can differ by more than 100 times. In the past, the best sales positions were prepared for Tiangong Fang. The quality of the flying swords produced by Tiangong Fang is mainly low-priced and low-cost. It is not appropriate to put them in the original position, right? Seeing the elders bring this up, Kshandu sect master also had a headache. The main reason is that although the flying swords of Tiangong Fang are sold at a low profit margin, the quality is indeed too low. If they continue to be placed in the original signboard position, it will definitely have a negative impact on the reputation of Yu King Temple. But Wang Xiang Immortal has already spoken. This time, what he wants is not fairness and justice, but the return of a second-grade Jinden's Hinran. Therefore, let alone low-level flying swords, even if Donyu's Hinran makes a pile of shit, the ones that should be put on the sales position should be put on the sales position. Of course, the intention behind this cannot be told to the elders, otherwise it seems that the favor is too deliberate. Kshandu sect master refused to let go, and couldn't explain the reason, so the elders naturally had to argue. The two sides were just grinding like this, and suddenly Master Dongyu came to visit, which inevitably made the elders who had made trouble a little embarrassed, thinking that this person had heard the wind and came to cry. To be honest, if they really talked about the matter, the elders would not be afraid. After all, Master Dongyu has been in the industry for a short time, and everyone knows the quality of the flying swords he casts. But Master Dongyu is good at calculations and has a smart and intelligent temperament, so how could he talk about the matter? He shed a few tears directly in front of Master Kshandu and cried about several contributions that Elder Shiding had made to the temple in the past. At the time, let alone Master Kshandu, all the elders would be uneasy and would be guilty of adding insult to injury. Elder Miaoling thought for a moment and soon made a decision. When Shilili entered the hall, she took the lead and said, Master Dongyu, I heard that your Taoist partner Master Jingdun has not yet repaired the Penglai sect protection formation. Shilili was startled when she heard this, and then looked at the elders present, headed by Elder Miaoling, almost all of whom practiced the art of casting, and immediately understood. This is taking advantage of our absence to find the headmaster to force the palace. Ha, not bad. She smiled slightly and said, the sect protection formation has been in disrepair for a long time. My husband has been studying it for many years and has already figured it out. I was visiting a friend before and met Senior Yunzhen. Elder Miaoling said quickly, I heard that the last time the Penglai formation was broken by the demon sect, he took the initiative to say that he wanted to come and help. I wonder what your husband thinks? This sentence is a heart-piercing remark. Whether the former Penglai elders are still considered Penglai people is another matter. Whether the other party is qualified to come to the sect protection formation must be decided by the Kshandu headmaster. The purpose of asking Shilili was to imply that Luo Yan had monopolized the important work of maintaining the formation and would not allow others to interfere. Shilili would not be fooled, so she said to the head of Kshandu, Can I come and take a look? Of course I have to ask the head of Kwandu for his opinion. But my husband recently found a tripod, which is just right for the core of this protected formation. This matter is of great importance, so please ask the head of Kwandu to invite the immortal to confirm it. Chapter 798. It's Shen and Ding Ding. As the saying goes, the Ding and the formation are inseparable. There are many schools of thought within the formation, but only the formation master will study the casting of that Ding. The reason is that the Ding-type magic weapon has an extremely strong ability to suppress. Using the Ding as the formation eye can maximize the stability and toughness of the formation. There are also common formation flags, formation diagrams, etc. Although they can also be used to suppress the formation eye, the effect may not be as good as the Ding. Hearing Shilili say that Luoyan found a Ding from outside, the elders were stunned at first, and then they felt strongly uneasy. This Ding, what kind of Ding is it? Elder Miaoling was calm, thinking that it was probably an ancient Ding that was specially found. If it was an ordinary Ding, and it was used as the formation eye of the Penglai protection formation, not to mention the Wongxiang Immortal, even the head of Kwandu would not agree. Fortunately, I have already greeted Senior Yunxian, and no matter how you behave, you must find out the mistakes. No matter how proficient in formations, Master Jinun is still only at the Jinnan realm. Could he be more powerful than Senior Yunxian at the Yuning realm? As long as Master Jinun's maintenance work on the sect formation is eliminated, his importance in Penglai will naturally decline, and then he can slowly plot for the resources of Tiangong. However, Master Dongyu is indeed a character. When Elder Shiding was there, he was not very prominent, but as soon as the pillars of Tiangong collapsed, he immediately stood up. First, he fought for the maintenance of the sect formation for his husband Master Jinun, and then he taught himself the art of sword-making. Ordinary sword-making apprentices, if they had been in the sect for the same amount of time as she did, would still be doing odd jobs for their masters. Master Dongyu not only started to forge finished swords, but also achieved the best sales in the world. Many low-level monks flocked to purchase and praised her. Although the elders complained about the poor quality of her sword-making, how long had she been in the sect? This entry-level age, to be able to achieve this level, it is really worthy at being described as a demon. Although they are hostile, it does not prevent Elder Miaoling from having a keen eye for people. If he had known that this girl was so outstanding, he should have proposed a marriage with Shi Ding. The head of Kwandu end to inform the Wongxiang Immortal, and the two end to the Tiangong workshop together. The elders hurried to follow, and as a result, they saw Senior Yunxian standing outside the main hall, looking around leisurely. This senior left Penglai earlier, so many Penglai monks don't recognize him now, but the elders present are naturally familiar with him, and immediately went up to say hello. As the host, the head of Kwandu had to go over and say a few words. Taoist Yunxian smiled and responded, and then came over to say hello to the Wongxiang Immortal. Oh, it's Yunxian. Wongxiang Immortal said in surprise, didn't you set up the 5-flag sect off the coast of King Zhao? How come you have time to return to Penglai now? To answer the Immortal, I just heard that Penglai was besieged by the demon cult before, and the sect's great formation was stolen and broken by spies, so I wanted to come back to do my best. Taoist Yunxian said respectfully. Speaking of spies, everyone naturally remembered that the spy was from the disciple of Elder Shiding of Tiangong, so the elders all turned their eyes to Shilili. Shilili's face did not change, as if he didn't care about it at all. Wongxiang Immortal did not respond, but just said lightly, "Oh, then you are thoughtful." Taoist Yunxian was a little helpless. Logically speaking, it would be more reliable to hand over the sect's great formation to the Ning elders for maintenance than to the Jindanshinran. It's just that he has been setting up his own sect for many years. Although it is still a branch of Penglai in name, it is hard to say how much relationship he has with Penglai. For safety reasons, it is normal that people are unwilling to show him the sect protection formation. However, Taoist Yunxian did not have any bad intentions. He just came back to see how the situation was because he met Elder Miaoling outside and heard from him that the sect protection formation was in charge of a young man who had just formed a golden elixir and had not been repaired yet. After all, the sect protection formation is of great importance and cannot be neglected. If it had not been breached from the inside by spies before, Penglai would not have been damaged so seriously, so it is still necessary to be cautious. Noticing the cold attitude of the immortal Wongxiang, Taoist Yunxian knew that this immortal was firmly on the side of the immortal Jinun, and he immediately smiled bitterly in his heart. The immortal has already made his attitude clear. What else does Miaoling want to do? Is it a rebellion? We are going to Tiangong to see the tripods. One cunning immortal played the good cop and ruined the atmosphere. Crafty sect leader immediately played the good cop and said, Yunxin, why don't you go with us? Let's go together, let's go together. Taoist Yunxin hurriedly followed the latter and went down the steps. Everyone went to Tiangong together, and on the way, they attracted many passing monks to watch. Immortals, sect leaders, elders, and an unknown outsider. Where are so many big guys going together? When they arrived at Tiangong, everyone saw Lu Yan sitting on a rattan chair in the yard, playing with an 8-diagram mirror in his hand. And casually placed in the middle of the yard was a tattered bronze square two-eared tripod, engraved with various characters, which was blocked by copper rust and was faintly visible. One cunning immortal took a first look. Oh, this style, it looks a bit like Shenanbing. He took a second look and looked carefully. Well, could it really be Shenanbing? He blinked hard, and took a third look. Damn. The one cunning immortal flicked his sleeves and quickly threw out several formation flags, covering the entire courtyard and isolating the inside and outside. He shouted hurriedly, Crafty, close the door. The Crafty sect master quickly stretched out his hand and quickly closed the gate of the Tiangong workshop, blocking the sight of all the monks who followed to join in the fun. The formation flags immediately imprisoned everyone inside, so that the sect master and the elders all changed their faces. Yunxin Taoist's face changed drastically, wondering why the immortal put on such a posture. Could it be that he wanted to punish him? As a result, the one cunning immortal ignored him and just pointed at Lu Yan and shouted, You, Jinun. How can such a divine object be placed here? Immortal. Lu Yan also stood up and saluted. I also need the immortal to confirm the authenticity of this object. The one cunning immortal did not answer, but came to the Shenanbing, stroked it with his sleeves, and the copper green fell down, revealing the words below. So, he muttered to himself, and couldn't help but say, how could this not be the Shenanbing? The head of Crafty immediately changed his face when he heard this. He looked at the elders and Taoist Yunxin around him, all of whom looked shocked, and his mind suddenly turned nervously. If he had known that it was the Shenanbing earlier, he would have strictly concealed the news. Now he can only ask everyone to keep it strictly confidential. The elders are all Penglai's disciples, so there is no need to worry, but how should Yunxin deal with it? If he spreads it out, it will inevitably cause trouble for Penglai. Before thinking about how to deal with the Shenanbing, the news must not be leaked at all. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 799. Take it and play with it. Knowing that it was the Shenanbing, everyone didn't know what to say for a moment. The head of Crafty was shocked at first, but immediately turned to ecstasy after reacting. The elders were very depressed, and Elder Miaoling wanted to cover his face and leave immediately. What kind of reward should the temple give for finding such a divine object as the Shenanbing? It's hard to say. Generally speaking, the reward and the effort should be equal. The two real people Jinun and Dongyu found the Shenanbing, and the temple should at least give an equal divine object. However, a divine object of the level of the Shenanbing is not something that the sect can easily take out. If there is no reward, then Elder Miaoling will be caught and beaten, saying that Master Jinun, this thief is plotting to take the resources of the Tiangong workshop, and we are now venting your anger. Of course, it will definitely not be played like that in reality, but that's the meaning. Not good. We have to get out of it quickly. At this moment, Elder Miaoling felt like she had finally collected a bunch of good cards, and then the opponent played a series of king bombs directly, let alone winning. As long as she didn't lose too badly, she would be thankful. She was about to speak with a bitter face, and suddenly she heard Taoist Yunxin say, One cunning immortal, I have something important to report to you. Elder Miaoling's face turned pale, and Taoist Yunxin ignored it, just exaggerating what Elder Miaoling had asked him to do before. For example, he wanted to find faults in the sect protection formation, such as questioning the formation attainments of Master Jinun, and even his work attitude was not correct enough. Some of them were hints from Elder Miaoling, and some were made up by Taoist Yunxin. Anyway, they were exaggerated. As for Taoist Yunxin's self-narration, of course he responded on the surface, but in fact he didn't want to interfere in Penglai's internal affairs at all. He just came to see it after hearing Elder Miaoling belittling Master Jinun. Elder Miaoling almost vomited blood when he heard it. Of course, she knew why Taoist Yunxin slandered her like this. After all, Yunxian had already established a sect outside, and it was already a vague concept whether he was still one of Penglai. Maoling herself was protected by the identity of Penglai elders, and Taoist Yunxian was in even more danger. If Wangxiang Immortal really wanted to prevent leaks, it was not impossible to kill Yunxian and beat him to pieces. The reason why Yunxian turned against her and accused her was to show his loyalty to Wangxiang Immortal. Absolutely not. Elder Maoling quickly defended himself. I'm just talking about the facts, and there is no personal interest involved. Why is Senior Yunxian slandering me? The two quarreled and accused each other. Wangxiang Immortal and Xuandu sect master watched coldly, and the other elders shrank their necks and kept silent. Luo Yan, who was still a little confused, slowly came to his senses. Oh, it turns out that someone wants to plot against me. Looking at Lily next to him, the lady had a faint smile on her face at this time, which made Luo Yan understand and said, "If you question my level of formation, it's fine. If my attainments in formation are really useless, then Elder Miaoling's exposure of this matter is naturally not a sin for you King Temple, but a merit. Don't you think so, Elder Miaoling?" Elder Miaoling naturally didn't dare to take it head-on, so he could only force a smile and said, "I'm just curious why that formation has not been repaired for a long time, so I asked casually. But it's not what Senior Yunxian said, that you have an opinion on Jinlun, that's easy to say." No matter how she tried to clear herself, Luo Yan quickly confirmed the matter and said to Immortal Wangxiang, "I can discuss Taoism with Senior Yunxian. If there are indeed shortcomings in my attainments in formation, Jinlun is willing to bear the punishment. On the other hand, if Taoist Yunxian proved that there was no problem with Luo Yan's attainments in formation, then Elder Miaoling who rashly questioned it would be punished. As for what Taoist Yunxian would choose, is there any need to say more?" The Shenending was still standing in the middle of the courtyard. Even if Luo Yan said, "I don't understand the formation," Taoist Yunxian would have to bite the bullet and say, "You are so modest, you must have mastered the formation. I don't think there is any need to test you further." Elder Maoling would definitely lose this bet. She was about to speak anxiously, but she heard the Wangxiang Immortal make the decision and say, "Well, let Yunxian consider whether it is a false accusation." How did it become a false accusation? Elder Maoling was really disheartened and said no more. Taoist Yunxian was as if he had been pardoned, and hurriedly asked Luo Yan a few simple questions about the formation, and the latter naturally answered them fluently without any hindrance. These questions are too simple. Perhaps because he was too easy, Wangxiang Immortal couldn't stand it anymore and called out, "Take another one." Taoist Yunxian had to increase the difficulty of the questions, but Luo Yan still answered without thinking, and his ideas in many places were out of the box, with a simple and exquisite ancient style. This made Taoist Yunxian feel relieved, so he simply asked according to the normal difficulty, but it still didn't stump Luo Yan. So the matter was proved clear, and the punishment for the elders was quickly shown. Elder Miaoling framed a fellow immortal for personal gain, violated the rules of Penglai, and was sentenced to 300 years in prison. During this period, all the monthly salary benefits of Yaguan Pavilion were deprived and transferred to Tiangongfang. As for the other elders involved, they were deprived of 3 years of monthly salary benefits and transferred to Tiangongfang. Such punishment is actually a bit too heavy. Especially the other elders involved, although they were under the banner of discussing the matter, the Wangxiang Immortal did not tell you the evidence at all. He took advantage of the momentum of punishing the Miaoling elder and gave everyone 50 lashes, which clearly said, "You are not allowed to touch the Tiangongfang. You were greedy for his money, so I will fine you money." Therefore, everyone wanted to cry but had no chairs, and they all pleaded guilty and left. Luo Yan was also full of emotion. Although they were both picked on by others, the compensation given to him by Penglai was much better than that of Shushan. However, if you think about it carefully, it is reasonable. The one who picked on him and Shushan was the Chanmei Immortal. In the sect guarding Immortal is almost the same as the Emperor. Now the Emperor has been forced to issue a self-criticism edict, and the power has been returned to the Prime Minister, Headmaster. In the eyes of the Shushan disciples, Ling Yunpo has undoubtedly won a great victory. But in Ling Yunpo's own opinion, it feels that the Chanmei Immortal has not suffered any losses, so at least he should compensate himself, such as the Liuangi microdust sword. You are not the Immortal of the sect anymore, what is the use of such a good flying sword? The elders who followed the trend and took advantage of others are now just kneeling to fawn on me, the Chin Sword Master. It is too easy for them. If I were Sujian, I would ask them to compensate King Luo Peak and return all the monthly fees they have embezzled over the years. No, return 3 times. 10 times. Oh, the gift money. They came to apologize and make peace seems to be far more than this number. Luo Yan was just thinking about it, and saw that the Wonxiang immortal seemed to feel a little painful, and fumbled in his sleeves. As a result, he took out a small seal, handed it to Luo Yan and said, Jin Noon, you have taken back the Shenending for Penglai, which is a great contribution. Penglai doesn't have any good rewards, only a magic weapon that my master gave me before. Take it and play with it. Luo Yan took a closer look and was immediately shocked. Isn't this the Fanchen seal? Chapter 800 Swordmaster Luo Yan. A long time ago, Miss Shi had a magic weapon called Fanchen seal, which was a replica of Fanchen seal. The reason why it was a replica was that Fanchen seal was of very low grade and only required the true essence of the Foundation Establishment realm to drive it. Of course, it could only attack enemies at the Foundation Establishment realm. Therefore, after she lily formed the elixir, she completely abandoned this magic weapon. Now that he had the authentic Fanchen seal, Luo Yan realized how extraordinary the artifact was. Look. This angular shape is full of ancient beauty. The heavy weight in the hand makes people feel extremely at ease. The brilliant light flashing on the surface is the best emblem of the artifact. Wake up, husband. She lily poked him with her finger beside him. The immortal took the Shenending away. Oh. Luo Yan finally woke up and waved his hand. Take it away, anyway, we won't lose anything by exchanging it for this Fanchen seal. She lily said, oh, and was about to go back to work, only to see Luo Yan turning the Fanchen seal over and over in his hand for a long time, handing it over and saying, take it. What for? Take it to protect myself. Luo Yan said, I have the innate 5 elements of the great chaos divine light, and this Fanchen seal is useless. She lily's heart suddenly warmed. How could a divine object like the Fanchen seal be useless? Even if Luo Yan has the 5-colored divine light, which can overcome everything that is not in the 5 elements, there are always some things that are not in the 5 elements, such as thunder magic, such as yin and yang, and the rough and powerful pure physical attack of the Fanchen seal is just suitable for Luo Yan to make up for the shortcomings. But she really understands men's minds better, and knows that in this situation, she can't just refuse directly, otherwise it will make her husband lose face. She feels like my good intentions are not appreciated by my wife, so she said to him openly, took the Fanchen seal and put it away. Anyway, I will follow him when he goes out in the future, and my magic weapon will be equivalent to his. When she lily left the room, she saw the Chuandu headmaster standing outside and said to her, this matter ends here. No one should come to trouble you later, so don't pursue it too much. That's natural. Shi Lili was very sensible and immediately agreed, we won't make things difficult for the temple. In addition, the sword-making skill should be improved. The Chuandu headmaster instructed her, a flying sword that sells well may not be a good flying sword. Most of the time in the world of cultivation, the right to speak is not in the hands of the party with more people. The Chuandu headmaster left gracefully, and Shi Lili stood in the middle of the yard, and smiled bitterly for a long time. If I can forge a high-grade flying sword, why should I lose sight of the main point? Elder Shiding is no longer here, and the only one who can be consulted is senior brother Ling Yushu, but Ling Yushu has already set up his own school in the sect, and is actually in competition with Tiangong Fang. Shi Lili does not want to use up the previous favors, and would rather study the classics left by her father. After reading the sutra several times, Shi Lili took out new materials and prepared to melt them into a sword embryo. The sword embryo smelting stage is the most critical, which determines the 5 elements and other characteristics of the final flying sword, but the problem is that the quality of the flying sword itself can only be confirmed when it is actually out of the furnace. Many times, there is actually a problem in the sword embryo melting step, but it is unknown. After the flying sword is completely out of the furnace, the problem is found, and then it is unraveled and repositioned. It takes a lot of time and energy, which makes Shi Lili very distressed. If my father is still here, as long as my father watches me forging the sword, if there is any problem, he will definitely tell me the first time. Thinking of this, Shi Lili was also a little sad, so she sat by the window to rest for a while, wiped the wet corners of her eyes, and was stunned for a while. Then she stood up again and prepared to start working again, but Luo Yan had pushed the door in. Husband? Shi Lili asked, meaning is there something wrong? Nothing, I just came to see. Luo Yan said with a smile. Oh. Since he said it was okay, Shi Lili ignored him and continued to work. First, sift the finely ground jade powder, then add water to dissolve impurities, and after filtering it out, it must be dried before it can be shaped. Shi Lili was about to cast a fire spell when Luo Yan suddenly grabbed her arm. The jade sword has the attribute of gold, and it cannot encounter open flames. Otherwise, fire will overcome gold, and the refined gold will be dark, brittle and easy to collapse. Shillelagh. Although this statement is abrupt, it is indeed correct. Shillelagh had made swords several times before, and the toughness and strength of the final product were very poor, but she was puzzled, so she was still investigating the cause. But, does my husband also know how to make swords? How can I do it without using open flames and heating the jade powder to melt it? Shillelagh asked slowly. That's easy. Luoyang smiled and said, use grass and wood as firewood, burn it until it turns into ash, and while it's red hot, cover it on the jade powder to heat it. This is the dark fire method, which is specially designed for jade swords. Shillelagh thought about it carefully and found that this dark fire method was not mentioned in the classics left by her father. But what her husband said seemed to make sense. She obediently followed his instructions and burned the grass and wood into ash at high temperature, and then covered the jade powder with asbestos, and it melted it smoothly. After pouring the jade water into the mold, Shillelagh waited for it to solidify, only to hear Luoyang say again, jade is brittle. If you add a little stone iron, the toughness will be better. Stone iron? Shillelagh couldn't help asking, is stone iron compatible with jade? Try it and you'll know. Luoyang was confident. Although Tiangong is now in decline, it is not short of materials. Shillelagh went to get the stone iron and asked, how to melt it? It's still the dark fire method. After melting the stone iron, he also poured it into the mold. The two quickly blended into one, without any distinction between you and me. This, Shillelagh was surprised for a moment, and then he thought about it. When the mixture of the two completely cooled, it turned into a dull cold jade color. Shillelagh was amazed in his heart, but asked, then what? Then continue. Luoyang said. Shillelagh. She took the solidified cold jade out of the mold, carefully polished it into shape, and then engraved the formation on it. My wife. Luoyang said again, the formation is not engraved like this, I will teach you. He took the file and waved it on the sword blank like a dragon and snake, and soon engraved all three formations. Did you see it clearly? Luoyang asked. No. Shillelagh shook his head honestly. The formation sealed on this sword is different from the formation that Luoyang usually learns. It emphasizes the simplicity of the Great Way and miniature molding. To some extent, it is closer to the talisman. How did my husband learn it? Shillelagh was lost in thought when she saw Luoyang melt the jade powder and mix it with stone iron. Then he attached it to the sword embryo and sealed the formation into shape. He said, in this way, this good sword is done. My wife, I have many years of experience in sword making here. You can take it and study it carefully. Don't let me down. Many years of experience in sword making. When did you make a sword? Shillelagh was puzzled and took the scripture. After studying it for a while, she realized that it was the key to sword making recorded on the Shen Ding. After thinking it through, she couldn't help turning around and wiping her eyes. Why are you crying, my wife? Luoyang asked curiously. I took great pains and risks to get this sword-making secret for you. It would be fine if you don't appreciate me, but why are you crying? It's okay. Shillelagh shook his head and smiled, I'm just crying for joy. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.